Students of the Month, and I will move over here to do that. All right, so what we like to do is I'll call the students up one at a time, and you can stand here with me for a moment, and I'll read some nice things that your teachers had to say about you and give you a certificate. If parents want to take a picture or anything, you can do that. And we'll try to get on the mic in case anybody's watching remotely. Our first student of the month is Hope Sontag. Hope, come on up. Can you tell us what school you go to and what grade you're in?
Ross Montessori, and I'm in kindergarten.
All right. Well, I'm going to read some really nice things about you. Your teacher said, Hope is the most mature kindergartner that Miss Tisha has ever met. She would rather do work than almost anything else. We are so proud of her work habits and like the accountability she brings to school every day. Congratulations. Can I shake your hand? All right. Our next student of the month is Lalo Magadan Silva. Is Lalo here? We'll come back to Lalo if he gets here a little bit later. Our next student of the month is Amelia Everill. Amelia, can you tell us what school you go to and what grade you're in?
I go to Carbondale Middle and I'm in 8th grade.
All right. Here's what your teachers had to say about you. Amelia is a web leader in our school. This means she supports new students, younger students, teachers, and parents. She always goes the extra mile. She has also volunteered at all of the Carbondale Middle School volleyball games this year. Amelia is compassionate, thoughtful, and a strong student leader at Carbondale Middle School. Congratulations, Amelia. All right, our next student of the month is Delaney Yeager. Delaney, can you tell us what school you go to and what grade you're in?
Crystal River Elementary and 4th.
All right. Here's what your teachers had to say about you. They said, Delaney always brings an enthusiastic attitude to every class, especially math. She is an excellent and eager participant in every lesson, always raising her hand, ready to answer and show what she knows. She exhibits what is so wonderful to see in a student: curiosity, excitement, the desire to learn as much as she can. Those are great things. Congratulations, Delaney. All right, and our next student of the month is Addie Schur. Addie here? No? Okay, and did Lalo make it? Did we miss anybody? Sometimes there's a certificate that doesn't quite get to me. Okay. All right, well, congratulations, everybody. I don't know if Riley, do you want to take a picture? Riley will usually take a picture out here to go on the Sopra Sun. So thanks so much for being here. Yeah, you're all welcome to stay for our meeting if we want, but if you want to go, it's okay too. And Raleigh will take a picture out there, and we'll hang on to these for our other students. Okay. Next item is roll call.
Ben Bomfok.
Here.
Chris Hassig.
Here.
Ross Cribbs.
Here.
Colin Laird.
Here.
Christina Montemayor.
Here.
Jess Robison. Here. Erica Sparhawk. Here. All right.
All right. Thanks, Christina, for joining us while you're away, and let us know if anything's unclear, if we need to speak up or turn on our mics or anything like that. All right. Next item is the consent agenda, which consists of liquor license renewals for Homestead, Fat Tie, and the American Legion Post 100. Also a special event liquor license for the KD&K Labor of Love, and accounts payable for October 8th. Any questions or items to pull for discussion?
Would move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Erica, second by Jess. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Next item is persons present not on the agenda. Anyone here for a general public comment for an item that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, anybody online? All right. Moving on then with trustee comments. It's been a couple weeks since our last meeting. Anybody have meetings or other items to update us on? Erica?
I actually have Parks and Rec Commission tomorrow night and then CC4CA in a couple weeks. So I don't have anything updates from them, but I just wanted to, I finally made it to a potato day. I haven't been in a long time because usually I've got soccer games of various kids. And it was awesome and really appreciate how much work staff put into coordinating it. And so if you could just pass along my appreciation and our appreciation, I'm sure, for staff helping continue the tradition, because I know it was kind of waning a little bit, and really appreciate everything they've done to pick it up, and all the volunteers who put in a ton of work. It was really awesome. So thanks.
Thanks, Erica. Anybody else? Colin?
So this Friday, wow, it's really loud.
Good.
The CML Policy Committee is going to be meeting, and one of the things they're going to be talking about is a real estate transfer fee. And we're trying to convince CML to at least lobby toward that goal. I've talked to Christina and wanted to check with the board if it's okay if I get appointed by you to be on that committee. It's an open kind of thing. I'm already scheduled, but I just wanted to get your approval to advocate for that effort in front of CML.
Sounds good to me. I mean, do we need to do some formal process?
I don't think so. I think as long as I make it aware that that's what I'm doing. Christina's not on the policy committee or anything like that. But it could be we'll see where it goes, but we need as many people as possible participating in that meeting. So if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to participate.
That'd be great.
And just another heads up on the Good Deeds program, 4 more people under contract. We did close, as you saw in the Super Sun. So 4 more under contract should be done by the end of this month.
Great. Awesome. Should have comments, Ross?
So I attended the Carbondale Public Arts Commission meeting a week or so ago, at a meeting at which Andy Korber presented some sort of more in depth than I'd ever seen, and I think anybody on the board had ever seen, sort of the original plan and the revised plan that for the glass element of the facade. It was fascinating. The materials look really interesting. I think if that, I'm a little not frustrated. I think we need to really investigate how these things sort of make their way through various committees. Because I think if we had been presented with that, it may have been a convincing enough element for us to have said, oh, that's really important. And vital to that project, and we should do that. A separate discussion for the hot tub. But I think that I was really convinced that what's going in is okay, but what was planned was really beautiful and integral to that thing, which again does not have any entryway now for any building, any public entryway on that whole block, and so to have something there that would really anchor it at least in space, and be a real contribution to that downtown or that block, I think would be really important. I hope we can kind of consider that at some point. And I know the Public Arts Commission sort of also would have loved to have maybe been here with us as we talked about that, or some way of sort of combining efforts so that one, applicants or architects in this case, wouldn't have to make their presentation multiple times, but we could all have the benefit of really seeing that stuff. I mean, she brought in actual glass bricks. We could kind of see where things went, and it was really interesting. I hope there's a way to find funding to do what was really designed there originally. So that was a fascinating meeting. I will continue to sort of work with folks with Dia de los Muertos in my capacity as with the orchestra, but still just amazing efforts there, and I think it's going to be a great celebration. And I'm going to also be heading to the State of the Arts at DeCaw this week. So I think there'll be some stuff there that will be sort of probably worth reporting back here as well. Finish up with one real concern, and that is Carbondale Marketplace. I've driven by there a few times recently in the last 6 months to a year. It's a dump, and it's not, and it appears to be being used as an industrial zone for sorting fill, perhaps. I don't know this for a fact. There are changing piles and various large equipment and no building of the project happening there. This board relinquished the right to 10% of that land as a public contribution in return for a futsal court that could have been made viable by a gesture of good faith, which would have been a large fence and 50 soccer balls and the mere statement of, hey, if your soccer ball goes in the construction zone, just forget about it, have another. And there have been no gestures that I can see of good faith. I think there are some trees finally being replanted right now, but the green monsters remain. Someone's going to get killed there. And it's really an eyesore for our town. And I would like to see whatever can be done there. I think it's a thumb in the eye for the board to have accepted a deal and now being pushed off and off and off. The town has seen no upside to that arrangement. And I hope we can soon, maybe as part of that dealing with the transformers, the aforementioned green monsters, not my moniker. And finally, Potatoes Days is amazing as always. I somehow missed the coffee too early and missed the meat too late, but went home with a dozen smoky potatoes that were amazing to just eat cold with ketchup. I highly recommend it. And I just, that whole scene is really just lovely. And I wouldn't really change a thing. It could be a little bigger if we wanted to, but it's really wonderful. And I think it just speaks to all the best parts of Carbondale.
Thanks, Ross. Chris, any comments?
Just echo the sentiments around Potato Day. I like the continued focus on local food and agriculture and getting the potatoes grown town adjacent is a good tradition to be working on. Otherwise, not much. We did have a bike ped commission meeting, but the real meaty one won't come till next month when the consultant should deliver. In the meantime, the consultant should deliver their third draft of the mobility plan. So that next meeting will be a big one though.
Just a quick follow-up question. Is there a possibility that we could hear that, or should we just go to that meeting? Or it just seems like there's a disconnect between the plan and budget and next year. And
yeah, I don't know. There's also a stakeholder group. I'm not exactly sure if they're all want to be put together or if it's 3 different meetings or what. And I don't know if Kevin knows that.
well, maybe if we could be included in their meeting, just so we know. And I'd be really interested in learning more from the last time yeah.
Or maybe it would help if we just got to update kind of the timeline of like, what's the process? You know, we generally let the advisory boards and commissions work out the details of those kinds of plans, and then and staff manages that whole process with the consultant, and then it gets to us in a pretty well-baked form. So maybe we could see what that looks like, and you know, we're always welcome to attend those other meetings. But.
Okay. Just want to miss an opportunity to make sure that the map plan has some resources to move forward.
All right. Jess, any comments?
Yeah, just a few. I just want to point out that I did in the pool GMP meeting say word for word, I'm concerned about losing the glass block even on half the building as this faces Main Street. And I think even just taking half of the glass block design out will end up being a mistake. So I think we should revisit it. Potato Day parade was, I think, the longest parade I've ever seen in Carbondale. I think it was like 30 or 40 minutes. My kids went home with more candy than Halloween, which was great. I hope all our parades are like that. I spoke to a downtowner driver and he said they were consistently busy, and that has not slowed down at all, which I love to hear. We had some conversations. I had some conversations with CDOT about the school zone at Ross Montessori again. And it sounds like even though it's a public school, They will not look at the school zone until there is a crossing. If there is a crossing, they said if there's a crossing there, they will probably revisit the school zone, but until then they will not. And I also would love to see a monthly report on the pool from the owner's rep, even if we aren't having a formal update. I don't know how to make that happen, but if it can be in our packet or something, I think we should have an update once a month from that team. That's all I got.
Thanks, Jess. Christina, any comments?
Hi, can you hear me okay? Oh, perfect. You could hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yes, thank you, Colin, for mentioning this Colorado Municipal League. I attended that meeting a couple of weeks ago, District 11 Grand Junction. It was good because I was the only one representing Carbondale. Aspen was there, Basalt, and then of course other districts, Fruta, Grand Junction. And they did mention that they wanted us to host the fall CML, and Laura and I said no. Aspen stepped up, so they'll be hosting the fall or spring. I think because I was the only one there from Carbondale, they were just trying to get me to do things. Colin, they did ask me that Carbondale needed a policy committee person. So I'm glad that you texted me because I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna have to do that too. But I'm all for you doing it. I think it's great that we will have a representative. So it sounds like you'll be on a call on Friday, and that's exciting. I also attended the Chamber and Tourism, and the Tourism Committee, they're going to be doing two subcommittees. One, they're going to do Promotional and Development Committee, and the other Leadership and Budget. Jess, I don't know, I don't see your name on one, and I didn't want to volunteer you, so I'm on the Leadership and Budget one, so you could probably talk to Andrea about that. And then we're pretty excited. Anna Ramirez from the town and I have, and of course Lauren, have been working on the Latino Advisory Board. We set a meeting on October 16th. We've been walking the town of Carbondale. We've been putting out flyers. We put it in the Sopris Sun, a flyer, and I think we're also going to put it in La Sol de Valle. So we're pretty excited about that. We hope to get some attendees, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you more about that in our next meeting.
Great. Thanks so much for leading on that, Christina, and for those updates. All I have is just echoing all the comments about Potato Day and the parade. It was a great one. And First Friday was great as well. So I know that that's a big, heavy lift for our very small staff to run two events like that in one weekend. And I'm sure Park and Rec staff, not only are they managing this pool project and all these other things, but that's a lot. So lots of appreciation due there. I think that's it. Anything we missed for comments? Okay. Moving on to attorney's comments. Susan, anything tonight?
Yeah, I just have one comment. I recently gave a training for our new Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning Commission members. We went over how to make good quasi judicial findings for the record. So just thought I would mention that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do it.
Managers' comments.
I'll be quick. Just a couple of updates. Eric and Cynthia Colbrook and myself will be presenting a presentation about the pool and the fundraising efforts to the Chamber of Commerce at their meeting on Thursday morning. Also Thursday, the State of the Arts Symposium at TACA. I will be representing Carbondale on a panel about funding for the arts. And just a lot going on these days. Also on the 22nd, DOLA is doing a small communities workshop where they have asked me to speak to other towns about our newcomer experience. And so it's kind of a busy time, but it also seems like it's getting a little bit back to normal.
Great, thank you. All right, well, moving into our action items. First one is an AARP award for Nikki Delson. And I think somebody from AARP is here to present that.
Thank you so
Hi,
much.
welcome.
Well, first of all, I have to say, it sounds like I really need to come back for Potato Day because I missed something fantastic. Thank you all for providing us some time to share this very important award and recognition for Nikki Delson. It's such a pleasure to get to be here tonight and to have had some opportunity to take a nice walk around Carbondale this afternoon and really get to experience some of the terrific work that Age Friendly Carbondale has implemented here. And clearly just even being here tonight with you all and listening and watching some of the things that happen here, there's such an embracing of a culture of service here in Carbondale. So it's wonderful to be here. I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to present the Andrus Award to Nikki, because this is AARP's most prestigious award. And it's named after our founder, who was Dr. Percy Andrus. She led a life that was really dedicated to education and also really supporting building intergenerational connections. There's kind of an origin story for how Dr. Andrus, why she founded AARP. And she had the experience as a retired teacher of walking in her community one afternoon to go and visit a fellow retired teacher to find that teacher living in a chicken coop because of financial difficulty. And that really inspired her to take action during her own retirement and to found the California Retired Teachers Association, and then to go on to found AARP. And her philosophy about serving as opposed to being served is really a cornerstone for a lot of the work that we do. It's so, it is so apparent as I've had the opportunity to learn more about Nikki. Nikki is legendary at AARP. I'm sure that doesn't surprise folks that are sitting in this room, but it was such a pleasure to really get to learn the impact that Nikki's had here in Carbondale, and then to learn more about the community and age-friendly Carbondale and how you all have embraced this work. And not only because it is creating an environment that supports some of our philosophy around helping older adults to age with confidence, but the commitment that Nikki and this community has to really creating an environment that supports people of all ages and all abilities, the focus on inclusivity. There is not a more appropriate recipient of this special award. So we're so pleased to get to present this to Nikki tonight.
One of my skills is not holding on to things that are breakable. I am so honored. I really am so touched and so honored to be chosen as the recipient of this award. I have so much to thank AARP for, because we really did not know what we were doing. When we first learned about walk audits and learned that AARP had an age-friendly community, I was walking with Judy Blanchard, and we just said, oh, okay, let's do that, without knowing what it was that we were going to do. And then we came to the Board of Trustees, and Dan Richardson said, okay, we'll become an age-friendly community. And so that was about 5 years ago. We're ending our 5th year. So when I walked around town today, I could see the fingerprints and what it is that we have been able to help bring about in Carbondale. And I am so proud of that, of all of the things that we've been able to share with Carbondale. But I know that I am standing here and I am alone, and that's really scary and awkward, because all I've done is the things that I love to do. And to be given an award to do what I love to do feels strange. And so there are so many people that are sitting here that have worked with me and worked hard. And I'm so honored that Debbie has been here because she stands for volunteerism. And Carbondale is amazing. There are thousands of hours of Carbondale's contribution by volunteers. So I'm not gonna go through telling you everything we've done, because I do have the platform and I have a microphone, but I want to say thank you to everybody. who have walked this walk with me, and that includes all of you, and who very often have walked in front of me and told me, back up, and that's a good thing. I want to close, there are so many things that we're proud of, all of us that are proud of, but I want to, and some of them are very visible around Carbondale, but here's what I'm most proud of. I remember when Sopris Lodge came before the Board of Trustees and to Planning and Zoning and said to you all, there's a gray tsunami that's coming, and you better be ready for all the resources that this demographic is going to take from your community. And therefore, we need a Sopris Lodge. And I thought, tsunami, that's not a very good thing to hit a town. And so we set out doing something very different than any other AARP age-friendly community. There are now 900. There were like 400 when we started, is that we did not have an umbrella agency, Human Services, to support us. And we said to AARP, your plan, your blueprint doesn't fit us. Can we do what we want to do in Carbondale? And they have embraced us and mentored us. And what I am left with, what I want to share with you, is that being in this demographic, we are not just the users of resources, and we hope that you know that we are your resources. And thank you very much, everybody.
And thank you for everybody that's here to honor her, and for AARP for honoring Nikki's work, and for everybody that's been involved in this work with Age Friendly Carbondale. You're truly leaving a really positive legacy and a mark. As Nikki said, your fingerprints are all over town in the best way possible. And this is what makes this community work, when we come together to actually look for solutions to problems, not just complain about problems. And I think Age Friendly Community is a great example of that constructive kind of problem solving mindset. So thank you, Nikki, for your leadership, and everybody else for your contributions. All right, with that, I think we'll move on with our meeting. That was a fun way to start. Next item on the agenda is the waste hauling rate increase and bear discussion.
First up, a bear. Because they know that a bear is the person next person to speak. We hear both sides of this one.
There's one sleeping in the tree just around the block from me that I was just going for a walk last night, and my neighbors were like, it's right up there, right around on Capitol. And it's like sleeping in the tree with its paw hanging down up in a spruce tree. Hi, Kevin.
Howdy. Sorry, I had to make my way through Nikki's tsunami.
That's okay. We're just talking about bears. So why don't you frame this one up for us, Kevin? I mean, I think we recently renewed this contract, so maybe just give us the timeline and kind of where we are now and what happens next.
So we basically just began the first year of the 2-year extension that was approved. As part of that, the contract that we renewed allows for Mountain Waste to request a price increase based on the CPIU, which I think that's pretty straightforward in the memo. Happy to answer questions if you guys have them. But probably the bigger thing of the price increase is we're recommending that we actually increase our prices 7.5% versus following the 2.2. And that has everything to do with that negative fund balance in the trash fund. And we're just not making a lot of progress towards eliminating that. For those who may or may not be as familiar, that supports our yard waste every other weekend during the summer as well. And, you know, we've had increased personnel costs for managing the program. Those costs have gone up about consistently with the inflationary increases. And, you know, we're just seeing increased costs that we're not making progress on that. negative fund balance. It is an enterprise fund. It really should stand on its own. And it's hard to do that when you're in the negative. So one of the things I did want to mention is in your packet tonight, in the budget, the number that is in the trash fund for revenues and projected ending balances, I failed to get that info to Greg, so that number is low. If you approve that 7.5%, it would increase the revenue projection to about 89,080. I'll see if I can read. $849,250 for revenue, and it would drop the projected negative ending fund balance from about $104,000 negative to negative 84,000. That's where I said, I think if we do this and then follow Mountain Waste's increases in the future, I think 3 to 4 years we can be out of that, and then we can look at, you know, a little bit longer time frame and maybe adjust it downward if we can. This isn't, it has nothing to support but itself, so getting it as close to break even as we can without huge increases in the future would be ideal. So.
And do you remember, I have a hard time remembering. I know that when we started the single hauler program, we knew we were gonna have a negative fund balance at first. I think it was due to purchasing all of the containers at once, something like that. But we had a plan that it wasn't gonna take us this long to get us out of it. Can you refresh our memory on why we had a negative fund balance to begin with and why it hasn't been erased over time?
So a lot of it had to do with the cost of getting it started up. I mean, if you recall, we were probably 6 months before we did this, we were starting to get information out to folks. We had people working on it here at Town Hall. It really had nothing to do with purchasing containers or anything like that.
Okay.
It was basically the startup cost of us starting the program before we had any revenue coming in from the billing.
Okay. Okay. And I thought we had a timeline at that point that we were gonna dig ourselves out of that hole within a few short years, but.
It just hasn't happened. And I
Okay.
would say, you know, if you look at how much even personnel costs have increased, you know, almost 30%, which is double what some of the other costs have gone up. I think that's a pretty good explanation, but I know Thecia works really hard on this and spends most of her Tuesdays and parts of every other day of the week dealing with the trash program. So I think it's worth it. We just didn't anticipate, you know, those kind of growths.
Okay, let's pause there for a minute and see what questions we have from the board, because I think it's sort of a two-part discussion. This is on the rate increase to both keep up with inflation and the contract, and then also to add to get us out of this deficit. And then we'll talk about the bear-proof containers and how we might approach that in a moment. Any questions about this or concerns about the proposal, Colin?
No, just a clarifying question. So Kevin, it was previous 5 years? We had a contract for 5 years. Now we're on a 2-year extension?
Correct.
Was there any change in the pricing over those 5 years requested by the hauler?
So there were, and I don't have the specific details, but my recollection is it fell pretty darn close to in that range where it was just the CPIU, except for 1 year.
Okay.
And that was during COVID time, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think the CPIU was 8 or 8+%.
Sure.
And they came back with a request for half of that, not the whole thing.
That was just recently. I think I remember that. Yeah. No, I'm very sympathetic. Things are more expensive and the monthly increase is actually not very much per person. So, I mean, it's not a huge hit to people.
That's why I kind of picked the 7.5%. You know, everything matters, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But if you look, you know, the intent of the program was to divert, or one of the intents was to divert waste. So the less trash you generated, the less you paid. And I think that pricing model is still pretty relevant. You know, the increase in the super saver is not the same as the increase in the 96-gallon large containers, which is, I think, one of the goals of the program.
Yeah. Well, that and not having multiple companies racing up and down the street,
Yep.
you know, just to pick up different people's trash. So, I mean, I having not been on the board when this was adopted, I'm very supportive of what the previous board did, and I'm supportive of trying to get ourselves in balance with our costs. Yeah.
Okay, Chris?
So you mentioned that we do pay for both the lawn waste and the e-waste days out of this fund then? Is that correct?
Not e-waste,
Not e-waste.
the Saturday from 9 to noon every other week throughout the summer
The yard
comes out of
waste.
this. Yes.
Okay,
The e-waste is actually funded by the bag fee.
okay. So as far as the yard waste, do you have an idea how much that costs us per year to do?
I can tell you it was running anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000 a month.
Okay.
It's really based on how much they collect and what their fees are.
Okay. So, but that is being theoretically carried by this waste hauling fund, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one way you could look at it is it's like recycling.
Mhm.
It's part of what you pay, and if you use it, you can use it. If you don't,
Mhm.
you're still paying for it.
It does feel like it could conceivably be accounted for some other way in terms of, I don't know that it has to be, it's something that we could conceivably fund out of some other pot of money. I don't know if that matters, but, yeah, I guess I don't know.
I mean, when we set the program up, that was a very intentional part of this, like Kevin said, was encouraging people to, you know, through incentives, through price incentives, get the smallest trash can you can. And we thought, well, what would cause somebody to get a bigger trash can? And we said yard waste would be a big part of that. So let's provide a way to get that diverted to compost, and then let's provide the recycle to divert all that to recycling. And then you don't really have much reason for a big trash can. So it was meant to be kind of this self-contained enterprise fund that funds those three core services.
Okay, that makes sense.
Other questions or thoughts on this before we talk about bears?
Is staffing coming, so this is sort of a self, a fund in and of itself, but, and we are taking staff time out of that, or the staff are funded from this fund completely, a full-time staff member or more? How do we account for that? And maybe I should have asked this week. Understandable.
I'm going to take a stab at this, and I do not believe that it's less than one FTE.
Okay.
In the budget that's part of the packet tonight, you'll actually see the expenditures for personnel services. And I want to say they started out around 39,000 when we first started the program, and I think it was more like a third to half position, and that has grown by that 30%.
Sounds good. I've been real pleased with it. I don't know when it's appropriate to ask this, but I would love to see maybe a 7:30 start for for the trash cans. I think you might have a little more compliance with trash not going out the night before. And that would be my only request. But otherwise I've had good luck.
Any other comments or questions about this part?
I just want to point out that even with a 7.5% increase, it's still way less expensive than it was before we had a single hauler system in the town.
Mhm.
So I think I was paying like, I don't know, $60 to $100 a month
Mhm.
for trash,
Mm.
and recycling was on top of that, or I don't remember, but it was a lot.
It was a lot,
I think it got cut in half when we went to single hauler. So I mean, $2.68 I know it's still $2.68, but I think it's pretty important to try to get that fund balance back to normal.
So I'm not hearing any concerns from the board on the 7.5% proposed increase then. Let's talk about the bears a little bit before we approve the ordinance, just to see if that's something that we need to come back and add to it. And again, as a reminder that when we started this, bears were actually the driving factor that brought it to the table. It was a fall very similar to this fall, and we were hearing from lots of residents that they were asking for bear-proof containers, and their haulers were telling them, we don't have any, or the one that you have is incompatible. And we said, all right, we got to make it where there's no excuses on bear-proof containers. And then we added these other goals of cost containment and reduced traffic and increased diversion and all that. But it's appropriate that we're kind of back to where we started on that. And we've also heard some concerns recently that people are unwilling or unable or just don't want to pay as much more forever for a bear-proof container that seems to have a one-time cost. So talk to us a little bit, Kevin, about where we are with that and where you think we might head to reduce the number of non-bear-proof containers that are stored outdoors and that bears are getting into.
You know, I think there's probably not just one singular reason. There's probably multiple reasons why people aren't complying with the ordinance. Some of it is the cost and or, you know, the principle. You know, what I'd say to that is those things are way more expensive to replace than a regular trash can, and the mechanisms in them do fail. You know, it's not just a simple hinge on a lid. So I think cost is a factor. I think, you know, some of the reason that this even came to this level is we have some situations with tenants where their landlord provides the trash service as part of their lease. Well, if that's the case, the tenant is the one that actually gets the ticket. It's not the landlord, but yet they can't come in here and say, change my trash service. There's just so many things to think about that could be causing this. You know, anecdotally, I talked to our code enforcement officer, and you know, he was out actually giving a warning to somebody, and the guy's like, well, what do you want me to do? He's like, well, can you put it in the garage there? No, that's where my landlords park their cars. Jeez. I said, well, can you put it in the shed there? He's like, yeah, that's my shed, but it's full of my stuff. I can't fit it in there. And so, you know, there's space considerations too. I think, you know, one approach, and I'll admit it's pretty heavy-handed, is to consider at the next time this contract is up, do we go out to an RFP and just the option is a bear-proof trash can? You know, and I think if we made that decision, I think it would take a lot off the compliance plate, but you would also have the folks that go, why am I being penalized? I can put it in my garage and I bring it out at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Because we'd have to increase rates accordingly. When you say penalized, is that what you mean?
I think that would be the perception, because right now you can see in our fee schedule the difference between having a non-bear-proof container and a bear-proof container. If the next RFP is strictly bear-proof containers and that's it, you won't have that pricing. You won't see it, but it'll still be there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
Well, I was just gonna say, kind of along those lines, I've been thinking and wondering from both the trash company and from code enforcement, if cost is a problem, if we consider taking that on instead of building it into the cost, where it's like somebody's in a situation like that. And so it might just be one off, or maybe we say, we'll do 100 a year or something like that. You can apply if you have, and we'll give you a bear-proof trash can. I know they're whatever in the $300 range each, so I know they're a lot more expensive, but just deciding on our own that we take that on for the folks who are either resistant or don't have, or are in, it sounds like it's mostly like tenant situations, or homeowners who just don't have a place to put it at night. So, I mean, I'd be willing to consider that if we had some numbers on kind of what that might look like, instead of, if we didn't want to wait and go down the path of everybody gets a bear-proof container. So something to think about.
So exploring, I mean, we could explore kind of subsidies, essentially.
Yeah.
Different ways that we could subsidize it so that there's not this big disincentive to do it yourself.
I sent out a note to everybody. There's a state program that funds
Oh, right.
bear-proof containers. Aspen just got a whole bunch of them.
Mhm.
So we potentially could apply, get 100 or 200 and start getting them out to the people who have the most challenges, tenants, stuff like that,
Mhm.
and see where that goes. I don't know how much you can get, but we could check with our neighbors to the south and find out how they get doing it.
And are they doing it for like residential curbside, or is that like for the parks and stuff? that they-
I'm not quite sure. It seems like you get bear-proof containers and you can start distributing them to your residents.
We could look into funding and grants.
Is the cost, the monthly cost, if they are provided a bear-proof container, isn't their monthly cost still going to be more based on the labor that it takes to get out of the truck? Like, I don't think just giving them the container keeps their cost low every month. Am I understanding that wrong?
Right now, I think that, we had a mix because when we started this, we said, if you have a bear-proof container, we'll continue to service it until it breaks or whatever, and then you have to switch to one of Mountain Waste containers. And Doug can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what they're doing is making a move to bear-proof containers that work with their automated trucks. The mechanism actually only functions to open the lid like when it's completely upside down. So, we may have to, if we go down the grant road or that, but I think we're moving away from the labor. And it's more about, they still wear out, they're still more expensive, so you have to cover the cost of replacement through that monthly fee.
Okay, Lauren, you had some?
I was basically gonna say the same thing. I thought that people buying their bear-proof cans is actually a little bit problematic for Mountain Waste because there's only certain types of cans that their equipment works with. On the math, let's say $15 a month additional is $180 a year, so $360 every 2 years. I'm kind of assuming, but I don't know, and maybe Doug does know, if they're estimating that a bear-proof can will last 2 to 3 years. Is that the reason for the pricing being what it is?
Yeah, Doug, if you could just shed a little light on this in general. I mean, I think what you can hear is that we're not going to make any big change tonight. We're already under contract, but that like, how should what are some factors that we should consider as we try to expand access to bear-proof containers? That's
Well,
really what we're
a
talking
couple things,
about.
the grant program, which is a wonderful program. I know some of the cities have gotten that. There is we call an automated cart, so that when the can tips in just a certain direction, there's a little ball bearing that unlatches it. You can request that kind of container. So the modern trash system, whoever does your trash in the future is going to go to what they call automatic side load. It's one guy in a truck, the arm reaches out, so you don't have to get out at every stop. So make sure you're requesting automated side load. I would also say if the city is buying them, get a different color. Don't get brown. No, I mean, so that whoever's doing it, those are yours. So there's a color option. So these are yours. They've got your name stamped on the side of it. So they are a valuable asset.
Could you help us understand the pricing a little bit? I mean, one
Sure.
complaint that we've gotten consistently is people feel like, hey, there should be a one-time cost to this, not a $15 a month
Well,
forever.
again, we tried to get the costs down as much as we possibly could in the answer to the RFP. There was that pay as you throw. And to get that cost down, it was a little bit of who are we going to charge here? So the bear option was a little bit more expensive to keep the rest of the program it could have been $1 or $2 cheaper probably, but not much more. The replacement cost, we look at about 12 or 15% failure rate on the little bits in there every year. So 10% of the cans, somebody calls us and says it doesn't latch anymore. And we have to go put a guy in a truck, drive it out, either fix the latch or replace the container. We send those back to be recycled. We sent 2 trucks this year back to Denver full of cans. They weren't all bear-proof cans, but we sent 2 truckloads back to Denver to be recycled.
There's some waste there too. I mean, before we go putting these everywhere, I think that's something to consider if they have a much shorter lifespan. Okay, well, Kevin, as far as process, so we've just started this 2-year contract. So is it true that we can't really make big changes like changing the whole pricing structure and requiring bear proof and all that until the end of that? Or where are we with that kind of decision making?
That would be my recommendation is, we just entered into a 2-year contract extension. So I think we should honor that. And part of the reason I'm bringing this up now is so if we want to look at, wholesale changes to this at the end of this, we really need to be making that decision in the next 6 to 9 months so we can start putting together an RFP. If we're going, all bear proof containers, the people that bid on that, we're going to need to give them enough time to actually acquire those. They're hard to find.
There's one manufacturer of bear-proof containers for 96-gallon containers. It's only one now.
Okay. Other thoughts from the board on where we might head with this?
Well, I would think it'd be really great to explore the grant, so at least get some.
Yes.
And get them out to people. I'm just wondering, so how big of an issue is it? Like, do we have a sense of a heat map of where all the complaints are happening? Is it a multifamily? Do we have any data that could help us understand what's the scale? Is it only people in this part of town? Is it all over town? Is it near restaurants? Is it just some people who always put their trash out early at night and then leave it, and then the bears knock over the container?
Well, a couple things.
What are you seeing?
This is the worst year we've seen in 15 or 20 years. It comes in cycles. We get probably 1 bad year out of 5. I would say this year is kind of a 1 bad year out of 15 or 20. It's worse in Glenwood Springs than it is here. There is, in talking to the wildlife, the acorns, there was an early freeze at some point, so there were no acorns up high. And it is a particularly bad year. I don't, would this happen again next year? Probably not, but it's going to happen again. Anybody who tells you differently is, there's some climate change going on and early snows, and it is generally something that happened 3 or 4 months ago that's set us on this path to the bears coming down to see us, and it's about to get worse. We've got another month, and then it goes away, but we have a month of they're going to be around.
I'd also say that we could generate some sort of idea by just where we've given tickets and warnings.
Well, Jess?
I think it's pretty much all over town. We've given, not including warnings, 28 tickets since August 20th. And our ordinance officer he probably spent half of his week every week for the entire month of August. I don't know what it was like in September. Just enforcing trash. And some of it was that people never brought their cans in, and some of it was that people put their cans out the night before, or, that they were overflowing and the bears got into them, and, it was everything.
Okay. I see Christina has her hand up. Christina, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going back to the memorandum. Thank you, Kevin, for the presentation of memorandum. I was looking at, if this is correct, the number of customers. If I'm reading it right, the bear resistant, so am I reading that out of all customers, only 7% of customers have the bear resistance? And 47% have the medium trash, which is not bear resistance?
What I was trying to give there was not a complete breakdown of all of our trash services, but the 5 highest numbers, I can get the information of strictly bear resistant versus non-bear resistant to you.
You
But
did.
we
It's in
have
there.
other service levels that have bear resistant containers in them other than what's listed in the memo.
I believe it's 14%.
It says 13.4% in one of the paragraphs.
Oh.
There are 86.6% regular trash containers and 13.4% bear resistant trash containers.
Is there
Look at that.
large?
I did math.
Is there large bear trash retainers? Because I only see medium on here. Is there large ones?
Yes.
Yes, there's
Okay.
large, medium, and small
Okay.
slash super saver.
And in the future, do these trucks capable of handling different size bins?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Colin, Erica. Okay, go ahead, Erica.
Well, if it's, I mean, I realize it's a lot of time, but if it's only 28 tickets, I mean, I feel like I'd be willing to buy 28 bear-proof containers. I mean, I guess I don't think we should give bear-proof containers to everybody. I do think that would be some waste. I think there's a lot of people, like most of my street doesn't need them. Most of everybody I see coming out in the morning, so I just think we'd be creating more work and more mechanisms to break if we went across the board. And if it's, 28 tickets, and even if it's double, there's, 30 warnings that went out. In my mind, that's still only 50 customers that we need to help get bear-proof containers potentially. And so it starts to be, in my mind, a little bit feasible where we can say, let's go after this grant funding, or even allocate some general funds and just buy some containers that are on hand that staff can give out if needed, whether they're bright pink or purple or some cool color for Carbondale. So I just think, to me, that seems doable for us, so.
What,
Is it equitable, though?
and what happens when someone gets the container from the town? Is their monthly rate still $50?
Yeah, and then why would anybody pay the full rate, right? Like, I think once this is
True.
a bigger conversation, like, we're
True.
not gonna solve it right
Yeah.
now. But Colin, you were waiting.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I think one way to kind of address that would be, hey, let's get 20. First come, first serve, come and apply, and that's your effort. I mean, that's showing some effort. And I think we would keep it the same rate. I don't think we should charge separately for that. It might just get weird. But I think that's one way of doing it. Just sort of a first come, first serve. If you're going to put in that effort, and we let the people that know have had a bear problem, obviously, that this is an option, and maybe that's something that would work.
But if they're paying the $50 a month, they can just get a bear-proof container from Mountain Waste.
Yeah, there's not a lack of containers, there's just a lack of willingness to pay. That's the
Yeah.
only problem that we're actually dealing with, is that people don't wanna pay the extra $15 a month. That's the whole problem.
So do we fine people when they've let their trash out and get thrown out? I mean, if the fine is high enough, and you're like, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
We're gonna fine you $150, or you're gonna get a bear-proof container and pay $15 a month. I mean, it's kind of up to you, but we can't let you keep having the bears get into your trash.
So
I mean,
the fine is $130 for the first offense,
Uh-huh.
$250 for the second offense, and $500 for the third offense. And at that 500 third offense level, you will automatically be on the bear container program.
I mean,
That
do
is
we-
in our ordinance.
So, I mean, it's incentivized to get the bear-proof container.
It
Early.
is.
But why, you're gonna pay $500
And there are
first.
legal ramifications if you do not pay. It is a ticket, a citation, just like a speeding ticket or a parking ticket. So.
And I wonder if there's a way to just explore, how do we penalize, but also support people getting them?
I mean, it seems like what there's support for on the board is, in the short term, exploring this grant program, seeing if we can get some on hand. And if there's somebody who is so hard up that they cannot do the $15 a month, and they're getting cited and they're complaining about it, that there's some way, without adding a huge administrative burden to town staff. That would be my concern, is that suddenly there's a line of people applying for the free bear-proof trash container program or whatever it is. But it sounds like there's interest in helping people access this so that there's no excuses. But we do have, I just want to keep saying, like, we have a really good system in place. The only obstacle is $15 a month. And that's a lot to some people, but that's the only obstacle.
They're still gonna pay the $15 a month, whether we give them the trash can or the trash company does. Like, we're not actually saving them $15 a month by us going out and buying the trash cans. That doesn't do anything.
Unless we said these are gonna be you're not gonna be charged the bear-proof, price for that. I think that's what people are talking about, right? Is like remove the financial burden.
We can certainly look into it and, talk about pros and cons, the what ifs, So fine, they don't pay the $50 a month for the first 2 years and then their bear-proof trash can dies and they get another one and boom, they're at $50 a month because they already got a free one from the town. There's lots of, we'll just have to, we'll bring the board something.
And I think another way to look at it is in the next contract renewal, which is 2 years away, but one more fall bear season, would be some way to raise everybody's rates enough that you could just choose for the same price. I either need a bear-proof container or I don't. And that's built in to the whole amount of revenue coming into the system. And then it's not an individual
That
thing.
seems much more equitable to me.
So
Like
we could-
across the board.
We could look at that then, and with an RFP, I mean, that would be part of the criteria would be to say, you're gonna provide these at the same price, even though we acknowledge that there's a different cost to them. And if everybody says that they want one, then we're in a pickle.
And where's the sweet spot? If
Yeah.
it was $5 more a month,
Yeah,
would anybody complain?
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just in the meantime, my main concern would be, in the meantime, it looks like we're applying the largest monthly increase to the bear resistant container by passing this thing essentially.
Because
I
it's
guess
a
it's, no, it's
percentage.
a couple cents less than the large trash, medium recycle. But it's, I guess I would feel like I would be willing to go along with maybe having that just go at the CPI rate and not the full 7% increase or whatever. And then maybe we try to balance out the lower end of it later on, but I guess it seems perverse to me to like be saying we want to do all this bear stuff in theoretical future, but in the meantime, we're penalizing people very directly, immediately for trying to do the right thing. So.
I mean, I think the nature of that, you're right, it's got a larger dollar increase because if everybody's going up 7.5% and that's starting from a higher base because it's $15 more.
Yeah.
Then it's gonna be a larger increase. So we can start to try to distort that and make it where it's not $15 more or something. But I think that's getting into the contract. Like, I don't know what exactly we would do right now, different from what's suggested.
Well, I mean, our contract has this CPI thing that they're requesting. And then there's a separate question on top of that, of whether we want to improve our fund balance on it. And this would obviously slow down our progress if we were not to add, if we were to just go with their requested CPI increase and not that difference, we would extend the time it would take us to repay for sure, but we would also cut the amount of money that is being ratcheted up for people.
It just seems like if we're gonna not increase the bear-proof containers and increase the people that have regular containers who put their trash in their garage, then you're penalizing the people that are doing the right thing. So like, which right people are you penalizing?
I mean, I guess I would say in a lot of cases, the people who have issues with bear-proof containers are not in a position where they have a garage to.
Maybe.
So I feel like that's probably a little bit more of a regressive approach if you're penalizing and constantly harassing people who maybe are stuck in a landlord situation or don't have the heated garage to keep their stuff in or whatever. So in effect, we're subsidizing people who have garages and bigger houses.
Or people who just won't put their trash in their garage, even though they have room, because there's people on my street that just won't put their trash in their garage, even though they have room and they own their house.
Well, fair enough, yeah.
and they don't have a bear-proof container. So it just seems like you're either penalizing one or you're penalizing the other. Or we can be equitable across the board right now and then look at an equitable solution on the next contract.
Any more discussion on this? We're about at time for our next item. There's a motion in the packet recommended. Somebody could propose something else and make a motion accordingly. Kevin, did you have any last thoughts on, Chris has put out an idea of increasing some at some rate and others at other rates.
As long as we approve what Mountain Waste has requested per the contract, we can do whatever we want with the fee we charge. And the other thing I would add, I didn't think this whole bear thing was gonna get solved tonight.
Yeah.
I wanted to get some discussion going on it. Would there, for the next discussion on this, would there be interest in, I think we know the data we need to bring back for the next discussion. The one thing we haven't talked about is do we still want to stick with the 3 strikes, or do we want to back off to, 1 or 2? And maybe look at bumping those fines up for violation.
Yeah, I actually thought it was that on your first offense, you get moved to the bear-proof container. I didn't realize it was after 3. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna suggest that why don't we approve the CPI request and then ask staff to come back to us with some thoughts, given what we've just talked about, and see if we can find some balance between incentivizing but not penalizing within our purview.
What's your timeline though? I thought you needed this so that these go into effect.
It's budget.
Oh, so it's by January 1st they would go into effect?
No, these go into effect November 1st.
November 1st.
So, we could present some options both ways, look at what it does revenue wise, but we'll need to make a decision at the next board meeting, regular meeting. So we're not doing it after the fact.
Okay, that's one option. Another option is to pass what's in here if anybody wants to make that motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 11, series of 2024, updating Appendix A of the Municipal Code with waste hauling rates becoming effective November 1st, 2024.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion before we take a vote?
Yes, real quick question. Are fees a separate issue? I'd be happy to, I think my thought would be that maybe the best course of action is we pass this motion and then we discuss fees, like a second strike and you're on the bear program doesn't change any of the fee, doesn't change the fee structure. It just changes that. And I think that would maybe solve our issue for a little bit. Or you could come back with some thoughts on how that fee structure or fine structure, I guess, might work. And I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, they're separate issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can talk about the penalties,
So
the
the
fines.
penalty, the penalties are separate from the fee structure, but the penalty is we're bumping you to that next fee structure, and that seems fine. I would vote yes, given that discussion.
Okay.
going
Okay,
forward.
and it sounds like we're interested in further discussion about, for the next contract renewal, how we could make it less of a financial barrier to getting a container. But we have a motion and a second to approve as presented by staff at the 7.5%. Any further discussion before we take a vote? Okay, can we do a roll call vote, please?
Ben Bompock.
Yes.
Chris Hassig.
No.
Ross Krebs.
Yes.
Colin Laird.
Yes.
Yes.
Christina Montemayor.
No.
Jess Robison.
Yes.
Erica Sparhawk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Doug. All right, thanks, everybody. Good discussion. If it was an easy problem, it would be solved by now, right? Okay, next item on the agenda is the continued public hearing for 522 Highway 133 Restaurant. Last time we had a good discussion about this. Hi, Chester,
Yeah, we're
welcome
here for
back.
some bear-proof trash cans.
Yeah. And hopefully we can get to a resolution of this item tonight. It is a public hearing, so we'll hear presentation from staff, questions from the board. Any updates, presentation from the applicant, questions from the board. I'll open the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak, you can approach the podium at that point. Then we'll close the public hearing if we're ready to make a decision, and then we'll make a decision. So with that, Jared, can you update us on what's changed since last time? And thank you very much for the packet. It was very clear.
Yeah, certainly. Hopefully this is the easy item now. So essentially, the applicant has revised their application in response to the concerns brought up at the last meeting. First and foremost, the undergrounding of the overhead electric lines, we kind of checked in with Excel on their 1% fund, as I included in the memo, that can only be used for undergrounding overhead electric lines and is pretty specific on the expenses of those incurred directly by Excel Energy. We did just hear back from today, and as of the end of Q2 of this year, that fund had a balance of about just over $290,000.
290.
290.
Okay, so almost 300. Great, thank you.
So the application reduced their request to a not to exceed amount of $100,000. And in addition, they provided some additional cost estimates that showed that with a contingency, the total project would be about $372,000. And so the town's contribution would be about 27% of that total project cost. Some of the additional costs are related to non-Excel related expenses, trenching, backfilling, landscaping, things along those lines. As far as the highway impacts go, the applicant is proposing to respond to the traffic impact concern by funding the construction of a 15-dock solar-powered we-cycle station, including 5 traditional pedal bikes. In addition, their proposal includes a $5,000 upfront station maintenance fund and a annual station sponsorship of $1,500 for 10 years. So I included in the memo some discussion about what a we-cycle station would financially impact the town kind of over the long run, as maintenance obligations kind of occur after that initial funding is utilized, and what those potential direct operational costs could be or would be after the sponsorship ends. In addition, the applicant has demonstrated how an impact fee would be calculated, and that was based on recent developments near the Main Street Highway 133 roundabout. And so we've included that in the staff memo. Overall, staff supports the revised cost sharing agreement for the Excel Energy undergrounding overhead electric lines, and do find that the we-cycle station supports the town and the development's goals of promoting non-motorized transportation. But really, it's up to you all, the trustees, if you really feel that the we-cycle station adequately mitigates the traffic impacts of the development as outlined in that site plan review criteria included in your staff report. We are recommending approval. We have modified the motion to include the new condition regarding the we-cycle station and the revised reduced cost sharing. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have. Otherwise, I'm sure the applicant would be willing to go into more detail about the revisions.
Great, thanks, Jared. Questions from the board for staff before we hear from the applicant?
Jared, could you speak a little bit about the traffic impact fee and how do we get that number?
Complicated trigonometry, I don't know, math, calculus. So essentially the
impact fee, as demonstrated in the Sopris engineering memo, is the traffic generated by the development as a percentage compared to the overall traffic volume on the highway. That equated to, I think, about 1.1% of the overall traffic volume. And then that was applied to a $2 million highway project. Not specific to what it was, but at the time when the city market development was coming in, when some of those other developments were coming in, that was the method that was being utilized.
And the $2 million in a number that we came up with?
I don't know specifically who came up with that $2 million number. That predated me. That was back in 2016, 17, I think is when that number was generated.
It predated me too, but I'm still standing here. My understanding, and Yancey can correct me if I'm wrong, is that $2 million was basically the thought of what constructing a roundabout near the city market development would have cost at that time.
Understood. It was just a clarifying question. I mean, I think you've done a nice job. I appreciate the work that the applicant has done on the proposal. It's just, that's an interesting number. And given that we know that no longer holds, how in the future can we potentially adjust that number? It would be something I'd want to explore further, not for this application, but in the future. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ross, did you have a question for staff?
Just wanted to clarify that the sponsorship is a total of 15,000 max for 10 years.
That is
not an annual contribution.
Correct. That is
Gotcha.
the proposal, a max of 15,000.
1,500, okay.
In the CRW zone district currently?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not a zoning change.
Correct.
Okay. And was that ever, that was not even a discussion that you had even in development meetings or anything like that?
Based on what the applicant wanted to pursue from a development proposal standpoint, there really wasn't any discussions about rezoning the property.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just continue to be a little bit, wonder how we're gonna make progress in terms of like the future land use map and stuff if we seem to have a process that doesn't like encourage people to evolve necessarily the use. I mean, I guess for me, I mean, I'm probably willing to support this as it is, but for me, I would ideally like to see it like a housing unit associated with this project, but I assume that would be zoning change for them and is much more of an onerous process for them. But I guess I would like to, in an ideal world, I'd like to give them the like right in the future to do that without having to adjust their parking or something like that, or to do it under administrative review or something, because for me, that's the biggest thing to swallow with this is potentially 30 new employees. They all have to drive into town. They have to park in that parking lot. If you could have 2 or 3 of them live on the site, that would be a huge win, in my opinion. I know it would blow up the design entirely and they'd have to start that over, but I guess I think it would be a better real estate investment from their perspective, and I think it would be better for the town's perspective of having some of that housing. It wouldn't even be under our affordable housing strictures anyway, but I guess that's just my feeling. I'm willing to approve this as it is, but I guess I would say that I'm also open if the applicant's wheels are spinning still to like allowing that use on the property. I don't know what the limitations are, but.
Is that a question? I mean, if they wanted to change the zoning and add housing, they would have to go back to the very start of this process, right? Which has been over a year, I think, in process.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess it seems like when we have somebody come in and they have a pre-application meeting, yeah, there's an autopilot way of doing it, which is what do they want to do? And then they just say what they want to do and you say, yeah, that'll work or not. But under the like vision of the comprehensive plan, I would say that whole district has a vision of becoming more mixed use and more dense. And this is while this seems like a nice looking project, it is effectively like under conceivable terms, the existing development has what, 5 different businesses in it associated with it. We're going down to 1 business. So we're potentially, it not de facto, but we're in theory losing the like types of business for diversity of businesses or something you could have there. So.
Okay, we're at questions for staff right now, so let's hold all those thoughts for a minute. Any other questions over here before we go back?
I have a question. Is when someone comes in for a pre-application review, is it in our purview to say, like, we want you to do this to change the zoning?
Mhm.
It is.
It is, we can
Even if they
encourage,
meet.
we can encourage people to change zoning. We hear the conversations at this level and others about need for housing, and we typically have those conversations with applicants. But ultimately, it's the property owner's decision whether they want to pursue, a single use or a mixed use, and as long as it meets the codes and review criteria, it can be reviewed and approved.
Stina, did you have any questions for staff at this time? We'll then hear from the applicant, the public, and then we'll deliberate.
I don't have questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Jared, you mentioned We Cycle in this as part of the proposal. Have we talked with We Cycle about their purview on this? Is this something they're looking forward to, or do they know about it?
Yeah,
Memo.
We Cycle is fully supportive of
Great.
this. They're the
Okay.
ones who prepared the recommendation.
Great.
The only kind of question We Cycle had was regarding the sponsorship
Mhm.
and just how that would relate to their requirements of kind of the We Cycle larger
Mhm.
setup of how each community pays direct operating and
Mhm.
how they have to get certain sponsorship levels. And so that was just their
Okay.
question, but they did provide a letter of support for it.
One quick question. Is payment in lieu an option here? So, I mean, if we thought that if it ends up being 65,000 roughly, something like that, that we would rather apply it to what we may learn from the MAP project. I mean, is that an option here? I'm concerned about it basically being, and I like We Cycle, I really do, but for sort of that being the kind of the recipient by default here when we have so many other traffic mitigation issues to deal with.
I would caution against applying the financial costs of the We Cycle to a separate issue. I think there's a difficult nexus to make that connection. And so if you want to say we want to pursue the We Cycle, I think it's the installation, construction of a We Cycle station.
Mhm.
If you want to pursue the traffic impact fee, then I believe we should look at the traffic impact fee and how that is calculated and what's appropriate there. But I wouldn't say, I wouldn't recommend 65,000 because that's the cost of a We Cycle station being a fee in lieu towards traffic impacts.
I thought that's, okay, I was reading that we were kind of not doing one project instead of another, but basically approximating the cost of that fee with this particular project. I think we can talk about it.
Okay. If there's no further questions for staff at this time, we'll turn it over to the applicant. Share some updates with us. You can reintroduce yourselves for the board, please, and we'd love to hear from you.
Sure, can I share my screen?
Yeah, Jessica will help you.
I'm Yancey Nico with Sopus Engineering.
Hi, Yancy.
Chester White, Carbondale resident and the applicant.
Ryan Lee, Form Fire Architecture.
Great, thanks, Ryan.
While he gets that pulled up, I want to just lift up the conversation a little bit and set the scene for the discussion that we're going to have, because we're going to get into the weeds on dollars and cents. I want to just sort of reframe what we're working on here. to your point, I've been working on this for quite some time now. And over that time, I've spoken with a lot of Carbondale residents, pretty much every demographic you could think of: young, old, white, Latino, business owners, restaurateurs. I went so far as to have Representative Valesco come from Denver to visit the site and see how this could benefit Garfield County as a whole. And those conversations, I spent a lot of time at Bonfire. Those conversations have informed the foundation of what we're trying to do here, which is really to be more than a restaurant. Some of the sort of critical principles that we're trying to live by include sort of promoting Carbondale as with its authentic small town vitality, prioritizing environmental stewardship, engaging local nonprofits and artists, and then bringing more culturally relevant programming to the Latino community. Those are just a few of the things that we've heard and we're trying to bring to life. What I want to point out for today's conversation is we're coming with an offer for 2 fairly large expenditures, and we're willing to make them because we understand that it's a requirement based on the code and that you all have a fiduciary duty to the town, and we want to honor that. But I also want to sort of paint 2 different futures based on costs that we incur at this stage of the project for no other purpose than for you to sort of recognize that there's an opportunity cost to these expenditures. And this is just one illustrative example, but in one future, my GM Rodrigo and I, we toured Carbondale Clay Center, and we asked, what would it take to have all of our plateware made here? And we have an RFP out now. He told us upfront it's going to be 50 to 100% more per plate. Those are costs we would love to incur because that's going to make an artist's career. That money is going to circulate around the Carbondale economy. It could be a deal breaker for a young aspiring artist. And then there's another future where we incur really high upfront costs developing this project. And we go to Amazon, we buy 400 plates, and Lord Bezos gets them delivered to us by Friday, right? That second future bums me out. That's not the vision that we're trying to bring to life. And so as we talk about these dollars and cents, what I hope you hear from us is we're coming with offers that sort of exceed sort of, I think, a minimum requirement. And that is what we think it'll take for us also to move forward in a way that allows us to bring this vision to life. So with that, Ryan's gonna tee us up with the first slide.
Yeah, we'll just dive into this and give ourselves a little bit of a reminder of where we're at. Location wise, this is 522 Highway 133. It's highlighted there in the gray triangle. You can see that we're located by retail, heavy retail, right off 133. We also have the RAPTA bus station due west, the Rio Grande Trail and Crystal Valley Trails. So a lot of mobility that's happening on this site.
So I guess we'll speak to the first matter tonight, which is the traffic impact fee. I'll point your attention towards that bottom box, and then Jens will pick up on the traffic impact fee. But the proposal that we're coming with tonight is to build that 15 slot recycle dock. Mirrored to the executive director is highly supportive. Unfortunately, she has a bike share symposium she and her team are at. We've also spoken with RAFTA and they approve of its location as shown on the next slide, I believe. The net investment would be 43,500 upfront. That includes sponsorship, et cetera. And then there's that 1,500 annual sponsorship fee over 10 years. We gave it 10 years just because it's nice to have your arms around it, but that'd be an extra $15,000. So net investment is $58,500. 3 key benefits of that. The first is it improves the Carbondale last mile public transportation system at large. The second, it promotes bikeability to this specific location, thereby reducing the number of left out departures. And then third, it has that immediacy effect. Instead of paying a fee in lieu, the traffic impact fee for a future project that doesn't have a start date, a budget, or design, this could be up and running the day we start the restaurant, which we anticipate will be sometime in 2026. Yancey can talk about the alternative, which would be a traffic impact fee.
Yeah, so that upper formula is in Jared was pretty spot on how that got created back in 2014 or 16. And it was almost a negotiated when City Market was getting approved. Because there was land costs, dedication. We weren't even sure what the shape and the number of lanes in the roundabout was going to be back then. So that got established with City Market. And then we've just moved it forward with other blocks and parcels through there. So I just wanted to share what that number would be to apply it to this project. And I also want to add, those projects had 0 existing traffic. I think Chester stepped up here even with that offer because there's cars out there that's been on this property using the existing uses out there. We could argue if they're matching ITE and what they are, but you know, from a engineering number person that uses manuals and et cetera, Chester's project should reduce the traffic at this parcel compared to what was there historically. But we haven't netted that out. He's offered the same fee in lieu formula as what other people along 133 or the we cycle. So I'd be glad to go into any more detail on that fee basis, but I would think the we cycle would bring something to the town almost immediately where that minimum funds for a future project, I don't even know if that would pay the CPI on whatever project it is, so.
Okay, thank you.
So back to kind of the proposed site plan here, you can see our parking lot to the south, building located essentially at the site, and our landscape all around. We're directly off the Rio Grande Trail, which is a great opportunity for people to bike. In our previous site plan, we had 2 bike areas, one on the eastern portion right off the Rio Grande and one on the western portion near the entry. You can see here that this We Cycle station will be located directly off the Rio Grande Trail, giving great access for bikeability here. So moving on to the funding request, we initially came in here and asked for a 50-50 split, not to exceed $125,000. Tonight, we're asking for really a 50% split, but not to exceed $100,000 from that Excel fund. You can see that it's a 50-50 split as far as the distance from 522 Highway 133, and then north of that all the way to Ascendigo. The total cost, as mentioned by Jared, is $372,000. That includes the trenching, the bedding, the backfill, the revegetation. And so the costs incurred here by Chester would ultimately be roughly $272,000 to underground this utility.
I'll just put that number in a couple different ways. If the town were to pay 100 of that $372,000, that's 27% of the total distance from the southmost to the northmost boundary. If you look just at that half, that is town property that is not adjacent to the development property, the town is paying 54% of the total cost to underground the utilities on your property, and I'm providing a 46% subsidy on that. The net investment, as he said, is from my side is $272,000 to underground utility, providing an $86,340 cash discount to the town.
So we did get numbers based on current projects that are based on this. So the numbers are, it's an estimate, but, with not on top of Excel, there's a lot of incidental costs that Chester's going to be incurring that we're not asking to split for. We can move into the pretty renderings. This is running, looking back at Sopris as you enter town. It's a close-up view. And again, I think this building is all about sustainability. I mentioned this in the last presentation, but this is a recycled railroad bridge, paying homage to the Rio Grande Trail and the railroad, and really tying this as a architectural piece as you enter town. This would be the entry off the Rio Grande. You can see the We Cycle Station 15 dock directly accessed from Rio, and the additional bike storage on the property. And another view of the artway as you enter the Rio Grande Trail headed into town, and the We Cycle Station off there in the distance. So really thinking that this would help mitigate traffic by adding this as a value to the property and to the community.
Great. Anything else before we ask you some questions?
Open it up.
Yeah, thanks for squeezing us in back-to-back meetings. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for the updates and working with staff in the interim. Any questions for the applicant before we hear from the public on this? Yep.
I assume we've had some conversations with RAFTA about going across the right of way. And are there going to be no issues Great.
Yeah, and just to add on that a little bit, that existing structure, it's sitting in there right away. There's a driveway back there currently, and the goal too is to remove the Siberian elms. So there's a lot of cleanup that they've discussed with us in this development and agree upon that, so.
Great, thank you. Any other questions over here for the applicant before we hear from the public? Any questions over here? Okay, I don't see any hand up from Christina, so we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. It looks like we have a few people online. Maybe we'll start with some folks that are in the room. So if you'd like to speak on this matter, please just approach the podium there. Introduce yourself, your name and where you live. You can just say Carbondale if you live in Carbondale so that our town clerk can capture it. And you have about 3 minutes, and please address your comments to me. We're not going to respond in real time to them, but we'll hear them and then we'll give staff and the applicant a chance to respond to everything that's heard.
I'm Brian Schneider. I live in Carbondale. Super excited about this new restaurant. Hopefully it's delicious food. It's more of a question about the engineering of it. The write-in, write-out proposal was a part of the overall packet. And that would definitely affect 10% of the traffic that goes in and out of the Dolores Way Road. So that whole Satank area, that's the only road in, that's the only road out. So it's going to affect the businesses, Carbondale Community School, 60 plus homes and 100 plus cars that drive in, drive out of there every day. And based on the testing that was completed on October 17th last year, which I believe was during fall break of community school, Carbondale Community School, somewhat shoulder season, I think that the proposal of a write-in, write-out doesn't make sense for the Dolores Way side. And because now you're going to be affecting, like I said, 11% of people, where if now they're forced to take a right from Dolores Way back down through either pull into the co-op, pull into the La Fontana Plaza area, overall, you're going to increase traffic going back north by 11% because now you're forcing everybody to the right. And then the other issue is taking a left back into Dolores Way coming from town. We'd have to go to the bus stop, I guess, to pull around. And now you're affecting another 100 people at peak hours that are going to have to pull in either to Garcia's or the bus stop or I guess Honey Butter to turn around and then go back and then take a right. So that was just my overall concern. I don't know if there's anything in terms of a recommendation of I'm sure there's tons of options and ideas, another roundabout or something, but a right-in, right-out on Dolores Way is going to definitely affect a lot of people. Like I said, 10% more traffic based on the testing and the numbers that we saw in the packet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Chair, do you want to just clarify for everybody that might comment after that? I think maybe there was a misunderstanding there of the proposal.
Yeah, so the current proposal does not include any limitations on the intersection at Dolores, Highway 133, or site access here. The only inclusion of the write-in, write-out is an exhibit that the applicants proposed showing that if that occurs in the future, there isn't some large portion of this development that would have to be relocated or be impacted by a potential future write-in, write-out.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, we're not going write-in, write-out at Dolores or for this access at this time. That's a potential possible future. So, but it was in the packet and could be confusing, but thank you. Anybody else in the room who'd like to comment on this before we go to people online? Okay, if you're online and you'd like to comment on this application, please raise your hand. It looks like someone named Morgan, maybe. Yeah. Is first. Try that one more time, Morgan. You were unmuted for one split second.
Hello?
There you go. We can hear you.
You can hear?
Yep.
Thank
Well,
you
we
guys.
could. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wait.
I think it's good that you guys tried to make change with traffic impact on Dolores Way again. I know that you're not right in, right out on Dolores Way, but I really think you guys should do right in and right out at the restaurant. Like for people turning in at nighttime to the restaurant or leaving the restaurant at night, turning left onto 133 is going to be dangerous for people trying to turn onto Dolores Way. It's just going to be an unsafe intersection. The current document, the 133 document, even on page 6 that these guys have, says that there should be a right in, right out at the restaurant. I don't see that on the plans currently. So I just don't think you guys should approve it unless it's like a right in, right out at the restaurant. I love the idea of the restaurant. I love the bikeability. I love biking around town. But there's just some major traffic impacts for people turning left into Dolores or left out of Dolores currently if people are simultaneously turning left into the restaurant and out of the restaurant. I'm thinking at nighttime, you know, you have someone trying to leave Dolores Way and someone turning into the restaurant, like, you know, it's hard to see at night anyways. And so it's just like, there's some major problems in here. I would say save the $58,000 on WeCycle. There's a WeCycle station across the street at RAFTA, you know, and let's just like really try to mitigate traffic impacts. I see mostly kids on WeCycle. I don't think like people, if they really want to get to the restaurant, they'll get there, you know, by RAFTA, WeCycle. But people are going to be driving to the restaurant. And so it's going to really impact Dolores Way. You had a lot of people at the last meeting showing up concerned about that. I'm not sure it was addressed. And I know that there's been traffic studies saying it's insignificant, but when there's going to be some accidents, I just think there's going to be some problems, and it's really a safety issue, you know. So I called a couple businesses today to let them know this was happening, and they didn't even know about this. Napa, Paint Store, all these businesses, Alchemy or Six Productions, they don't even know that this meeting's happening or this restaurant's happening. And so they were concerned about the traffic. And I know the restaurateur said he met with a lot of locals, but you know, I don't know what they said about the other side of the street. So I really think you guys should consider a right in, right out, as the document itself says, even on page 6. So anyways, thanks for listening. I mentioned this last time, but I don't think no one really cared about it, and maybe it's not a big deal, but I appreciate the chance to speak.
All right, thanks, Morgan. Anyone else online that would like to speak? You can raise your hand on Zoom. Okay, otherwise, if there's nobody else in the room or online, I think we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Oh,
question. I haven't looked at the history.
Can you
I am
introduce
Dan.
yourself?
I live in Carbondale.
Dan, what's your last name?
Schneider.
Thanks.
I haven't looked at the history of the debate or discussion here. I'm just curious, what was the reason of removing the option of the north ingress egress instead of the south ingress egress?
Okay, thank you for your comment. Well, we respond to all these in kind of in whole. So Jared, do you want to respond to any of those? There were quite a few questions about right in, right out and traffic and egress, all that kind of came together there. And if the applicant would like to respond as well, that's fine.
Sure. First on the last question, the rationale for closing down the northernmost access point was due to the CDOT access control plan, which is attempting to limit the number of access points onto Highway 133 and control the potential, in theory, the potential accident locations with more vehicles turning in and out. As far as the other comment regarding right in, right out at this property, that was something I think that was discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission level and at the last meeting. And you know, I think the general consensus was that CDOT has issued a full turning movement access permit for this development, and there wasn't sufficient evidence to state otherwise or to consider an alternative site access.
Okay, thanks. The applicant like to respond to any of those comments or questions that came up from the public? You don't have to, but if you want to.
I can go into more detail from council, but I think Jared did a good job answering them, so.
Okay.
I can go into more detail with what CDOT gave us.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I think we'll close the public hearing then and bring it back to the board for discussion. So we asked that, but we went through kind of all the easier requests. I remind us also, as Chris pointed out, this is not a rezoning, it's not an annexation, it's not even the kind of project that would normally come to the board level. And it's an administrative site plan review that staff felt was big enough, and there were enough exceptions and variances and small things that he wanted to put it through the full public process. So I just think we have to kind of keep it in that perspective that it's under existing zoning, meeting the code. There's some things that we talked about last time that we were all okay with, some encroachment and setback issues and the parking lane length and things like that. So now it's really two items, and it's whether we're okay with the town contributing this $100,000 for the portion of the undergrounding of the power lines that goes through a public right of way just north of this under the Rafta Trail corridor, and whether we're okay with the proposal for a $58,500 total contribution to a 10-year plan with WeCycle for a new station there instead of a traffic impact fee. So with that, just open it up for discussion, and then hopefully we can move fairly quickly to a motion. Erica.
I just think we should clarify that it's a 100,000 contribution, but it's from 1% fund held at Excel Energy specifically for undergrounding power lines.
Right.
Just so folks know, of our general fund or our tax dollars that we would be paying for that. And so I think it's a really like kind of legitimate expense that we put those funds towards. And then thanks for digging your patience with Excel to get the balance, Jared, because I think knowing we have 190 remaining in that fund and knowing we potentially have some undergrounding at Chacos Park is good to know that we've got some additional funds there that we might be able to use. So just want to make that clarification. I'm comfortable doing that. I think it goes over public property very clearly, and it's not adjacent to the applicant's property. And so I think it makes sense that we would pitch in and pay for that. And then I'm super excited about the contribution of making a WeCycle station right there, even though there is one across the street. I pulled up the app and it's currently empty. And so I just think it is, I see a lot of people using it. It's great that that one is empty at the park and ride, because that's what we're hoping. And so I think this is a more of an asset than the $22,000 contribution that we would get for a potential traffic solution at that intersection. And then I'll say what I also said last time is I think we just have to remember that this is an existing commercial property that Chris and I both love. And it's been dormant the last couple of years, but it did have, like, I went to the vacuum repair guy a lot. I mean, it had a food truck there, so it's not going from zero to nothing. I frequently see cars pulling out right there because it's also a convenient spot to pull over. It's actually amazing how many cars are frequently just hanging out there. But it is a bigger issue, that whole Dolores Way to Village Road, that we do need to discuss as a town and bring in other partners. So for those who are chiming in on the traffic, we're not ignoring that. But I don't think it should be this restaurant project that is we put on hold to create a solution to all the traffic in that area, because it's been an existing business. So I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited about I think our community will be super excited about it, because even though Chris and I love the old building, a lot of people don't. And so I think this is a great way to be part of moving the project forward, and appreciate your creativity and coming up with these solutions.
Thanks, Erica. Any other thoughts or emotion?
I mean, I just don't think I have the grounds really to oppose it. I think it's pretty reasonable where we are. I would just say, I already explained my ideal situation would be to have some housing associated with it. And I would be more than happy to entertain a further meeting if the applicant decided they wanted to consider that. I would be interested in fast tracking that as a possibility. Yeah, I think it's fair enough. I think we're gonna it continues, obviously 133 continues to be an issue. And I feel like, we're gonna have this map plan, which is sort of more town-wide. And then we have specific projects But I think we might find ourselves needing a little bit of a document that's in between the two of those, that's kind of a corridor planning document essentially that we could hopefully go to CDOT with one idea of like, okay, from the one we just built at Garcia's to RBR, like these are all of the things we're contemplating. Cause there are whatever, 5 or 6 intersections there that I think are on our list now. And we're not gonna get to building all them, but I think planning them, we can at least get somewhere down that road, so.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And I think, well, that's a great point. We can pick up in our next discussion actually about the budget, moving forward with something like that. Ross?
So is the right in, right out off the table according, from the applicant's perspective? For that property?
I'll go into a little more detail. We expected a right in, right out. And so when we applied to CDOT with all the technical data, CDOT come back and said, we're not comfortable with a right in, right out right now because we feel the mechanism to do that would make Dolores a right in, right out. And we don't think Carbondale's ready for that. And so the discussion with the pork chop, CDOT doesn't really consider a pork chop an acceptable right in, right mechanism because everybody cheats. Even though I've been told the right in, right out 3/4 that we did at City Market are working as good as any in the whole Western state, but people still cheated. CDOT's approach, the last 4 I've done right in, right outs in District 3 is a raised median. So they feel that they need to make a raised median there. And so when they digested all that, they said, no, we'd rather see the restaurant be a full movement intersection until Dolores is ready to be a right in, right out. So it wasn't us trying to change the access control plan. We just went to CDOT trying to work with them. In fact, when Chester, even before he bought the land, I suggested you're probably going to end up with a right in, right out because of where CDOT is. But then CDOT reevaluated that. And I've explained that to the staff. I don't know if we'll ever build a pork chop again in Division 3 CDOT unless there's no other choice. They made me put a raised median on Highway 6, 65-mile-an-hour road with a raised median in the center of it for a right in, right out. They wouldn't let me use a pork chop. And so that's why they issued the permit the way it is. And of course, they have a condition that when Dolores becomes right in, right out, this project will be right in, right out automatically. I don't know if that answers your question.
Sort of. So it's a state mandate.
It's a state.
State mandate that you cannot do right in, right out unless Dolores does. Is that how we're reviewing this?
Well, it's an access control and CDOT issues the permits. So they get to make the rules and the conditions of so we put an application together and they made the conditions of the access permit.
If in 5 years, the decision is made that this is what's best for traffic, the property owner doesn't have any right to a particular arrangement of traffic arrangement in or out.
No, it's bigger than that. It's Carbondale, Garfield County, and CDOT. You guys signed a document, went through a public process that created the access control plan. So CDOT's implementing that access control plan, and they felt that Dolores right in, right out wasn't ready for that because of the impact that even that gentleman. So they just conditioned this property to become right in, right out in compliance with the access control plan when Dolores does. They mandated that we had to line up with Dolores. That's just another part of their access control.
Great. It's a couple other thoughts. I'm uncomfortable with the recycle sort of in lieu of other options. I would rather see that be if it had to be a contribution to recycle. It sounds like if there are no bicycles right now at the intercept lot, at the bus lot, there should be more bicycles at the bus lot, not more bicycles across a street that already has a pedestrian issue. And I think to the extent that extent that we cover, the initial proposal was for the town to cover how much of the undergrounding? Up to what, 150?
125.
Up to 125. Okay, so, and we talked about maybe half of that being more reasonable. I do find that $100,000 ask is an unreasonable sort of negotiation to come back to it. Along the lines that it's a weird lot. You know, there's a lot of due diligence that has to happen with a weird lot. And certainly there's nothing in our books that says we will cover these things if a neighboring property owner requests. I think half of 150 is or half of 125, I'm sorry, is more than reasonable. And I would approve that. You know, to the extent that we, you know, that clay pots or clay things are opened. I don't really like seeing this as a negotiation or a kill the puppy situation. We've seen plenty of that in Aspen, where, hey, if we don't get this, we're not going to be able to do this thing. And I would just say that there's a lot of great things happening on that corner that, you know, I think it was it Biden or Obama that said you didn't build that. Like the Artway is beautiful and you didn't build that, you know, and like the zone that you're in has a lot of great town characteristics. It's the terminus, a natural terminus of a great bike path. And there's a lot of things that the town is already providing there that I'm not inclined to kind of go there further. I would like to see I would vote against this unless we can lower that contribution of the town. And then finally, the only thing I would like to say is that if we're looking, especially the one, I think it's always the one at Sopris, when we see renderings, I really, especially when they're Sopris, I want to see them at eye level. That beautiful picture of Sopris is a giraffe in the median, and no one will ever see that angle unless they're in a hot air balloon or a double-decker bus. And I think it's really important that we, as people who interpret people with very large projects come in, that we see those and we spot them and we almost weed them out, because unless it's providing a lot of context as to where buildings are, as an architectural photographer in a recent past, I know that when you get up on top of the van and shoot pictures, they look real pretty and the mountains are there. If we had seen those same pictures for a number of other developments, I think we might have made some different choices. So going forward, I would just, as the architects and applicants, I would really suggest that we eliminate those pictures or be very clear that they're not accurate from any realistic kind of view. So yeah, I'll vote for this if we lower that contribution significantly. I would really prefer that the money go directly to either our fund. I mean, that you could pay $65,000 as a mitigation fee. That could be a pay in lieu. And I think we could make a lot of progress on some pedestrian stuff as a result.
Okay, other comments or a motion? And I would just add, I'm supportive of the project. I think they've gone above and beyond, like, again, with existing zoning already, it's part of the town. We don't have a traffic impact fee as part of our code. You didn't have to entertain that. And to work with WeCycle in this way, I think is great. And I think with the undergrounding, as Erica said, it's through a public area that nobody else is going to pay for other than us through our fund. And so we're getting a lot of that cost through there paid for, which I think is quite reasonable. So I'm going to vote in favor of the project.
I'll move to approve the combined application for administrative site plan, conditional use for expansion of structure on a non-conforming lot, alternative compliance for an alternative to landscape island requirements, and a reduction to the minimum drive aisle length, and a variance from the minimum rear yard setback with the following conditions of approval and findings of fact, and to direct staff to prepare the necessary approval documents.
Second.
Motion by Jess, second by Erica. This is one where it's important to state on the record, if you're voting no, it means that you disagree with either one of the conditions of approval, the findings for approval. Yeah, that's the two areas. I mean, they need for the record to know why somebody's voting against it. If it fails, they need to be able to come back and address those things. So now's your chance, if you're going to vote no on that motion, to state if there's a condition of approval or a finding of approval that you disagree with. Okay, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Ben Bompock. Chris Hassig,
Yes.
Cribs,
No.
Colin Laird.
Yes.
Christina Montemayor,
Yes.
Jess Robison,
Yes.
Erica Sparhawk.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thanks. Good luck with the restaurant.
Look forward to having you all.
Thanks, Jared, for all that you put into this. And let's take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene to talk about the budget.
You did?
No, I'm ready.
Are we ready to go here, folks? We're all back at the table, so we're looking pretty ready. Okay. All right, Greg, it's your big moment. You get to present your first budget. I might just start by saying thank you for coming in the, the last moments of preparing a budget and being able to get it to this point so quickly, and it's a clear document. And for the board, this is the first of many discussions. So I think one thing that's important for us to do tonight is to keep it fairly high level. We need to understand the process in front of us, how many more meetings we have, what that calendar looks like, when we can dig into the details, because that's important as well. And in my mind tonight, it's about, where are we at with fund balances, kind of big picture stuff. Is there any big thing not in here that we've talked about? Lauren shared our summary of board priorities and spent some time. We just talked about this today as far as formatting and kind of put, what year we focused on something is that first column to the right of the text. And then the second column is what year is it in the budget? Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's not in a budget yet. So, staff has used that to guide some of this. So is there some big thing that we really need to put in the budget that's not there? It can quickly feel like it's too late to put the big stuff in. So tonight's a good night to talk about that. And yeah, is there anything big in here that we feel like shouldn't be? I remember a few years ago when we first got the town parking lot donated and we had $250,000 to pave it. And we said, hold on, let's not do that yet. Let's figure out what our long-term plan is for that. So, sometimes staff will propose something in a first draft and we can say we want to reconsider that. So with that, hand it over to Greg and Lauren for our presentation.
Second. Yeah, so thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here and yeah, happy to join the town of Carbondale. I just want to start off by reviewing the budget calendar and giving you some important dates to remember. Right now we're October 8th, which is going to be our first review of the budget. Next week, October 15th, during our study session, we're going to do public works, utilities, and administration departmental budget presentations. The following week on October 22nd, we're going to have the police and rec departments do their budget presentations. November 12th, we're going to have our second review of the budget, and I'll give a little capital budget presentation. And then on the 10th, that's really the big one to look out for. It's going to be our public hearing to appropriate the 2025 budget and set the mill levy for property taxes. So tonight, as you know, we're at the first review of the budget. We're going to meet 4 more times before the final budget's approved. Like Ben was saying, during this session, we really just want to identify any items that are missing and if there are any questions regarding the current budget. Again, capital improvement plan is a work in progress. It's going to be reviewed in further detail at the November 12th meeting. And like I said, keep in mind, it's just initial draft and this is all going to change based on your recommendations. So the first topic I want to dive into is going to be general fund revenues. Big thing here is sales tax is projected to be about 1.27 million or 20%-ish higher than the 2024 budget. And this could mainly be attributed to switching from self-collected to state-collected sales tax. This is a very unique scenario that we cannot anticipate is going to happen in future years. If you look around at other municipalities in the valley, they're all projecting either flat revenues or maybe a slight decrease. So I just want to keep that in mind. Another thing to address there, tobacco, marijuana, and bag fees, all of these are seeing a slight decrease. This is expected, these are considered a sin tax, so obviously they should decrease over time. That's kind of the point. But overall, revenue's up about 1.85 million or 16% over the 24 budget. Like I said, primarily due to sales tax, a little bit of building permit tax, a little bit of vehicle use tax, and then some grants thrown in there. Next, I just want to dive into some of the general fund expenditures. Big thing here really is that salary survey had a significant impact on the general fund expenses. This included a 3% COLA as well as market adjustments to remain competitive with other municipalities in the Roaring Fork Valley. On top of that, we had CEBT, which is our health vision dental insurance provider, hit us with a 13.5% increase. Additionally, we have 3 positions added to the budget that weren't previously in the 2024 budget. 1 full-time building plans reviewer and facility manager, one full-time senior planning / affordable housing manager, and one full-time boards and commissioners clerk. Overall, the salaries and benefits increased by about 1 million or 12.3% when compared to the 24 budget. Next, I just want to dive into some of the general fund departmental budget changes not related to salaries and benefits. So some of the increases you're seeing, town manager saw a slight increase for grant writing services. Administrative services saw a large increase for municipal insurance and workers' comp. IT saw a little bit of an increase due to cybersecurity costs. Building operations is going to see a large increase due to capital needs associated with town hall and the Thompson House. Public works and streets, you'll see a little bit of an increase there due to LED lighting at Hendrick Ranch. Gateway River Park, you'll see a small increase there due to the new shade structure. Environmental health includes a larger contribution to CLEAR, CLEER, and Garfield County or Garfield Clean Energy. And the community fairs, you're going to see an increase there due to increases with the downtowner service. But really, like we said, I just want to talk big picture here. Overall, the general fund balance remains healthy. If you look at page Page 11 is really going to give you an overview of all of our different funds and kind of where we see our fund balances, starting and ending. So if you look actually on page 12, you'll see our fund balance there is about 123% of 2024 expenses. Going back to page 11, you're going to see our fund balance is 94% of 2025 expenses. And just want to keep in mind that includes, all of our capital budget or all of our capital projects, assuming that we do all of them and they're all completed. Our minimum fund balance is 70% for the general fund, so we still have some cushion there to work around with. Don't want to dive too much into the other funds, as their department heads are going to come and speak on those matters. I just wanted to note the following. Wastewater rates, we're projecting to increase that by 5%. Water rates going to do a 5% increase there as well. And then as Kevin said earlier, we're going to do a 7.5% increase to the trash fund. I'm really adamant about, kind of emphasizing those, trash rate increases just because we are currently at a negative fund balance, which really isn't a good thing at all. So really, I just want to dive into this with you guys, see what questions you have. Is there anything you'd like added? Anything you'd like removed? Laura, you got anything to add to that?
I do, thank you. Just a little bit more detail about some of the things that Greg mentioned, particularly with, I'm just going to start with the 3 additional employees that are in this budget. A little bit of explanation about the need, although I think the building department, you probably don't need an explanation about the need. But I will say that for starters, even though these 3 positions are with salary and benefits, almost $350,000, they are offset by a number of things that we're not having to pay for or that will be offset with them. One of them is we're adding salary for the full-time board and commissions clerk, who will also have as part of that function, administrative support functions, be more of a front office person to be able to help people find what they're looking for so that people don't show up to the building department looking for the police and the police looking for the cashier and what have you. The rationale for making that a full-time position, in addition to needing the additional administrative support, is because we have been trying for 2 years to hire a part-time person and we cannot hire at the part-time rate, particularly for somebody who has to work irregular hours. So the cost of that employee is offset by the $20,000 that was in the previous budget for the part-time position. The building plan reviewer and facility manager, this is not a facility manager for all of our facilities, but this is a facility manager for the town hall and a helper for facilities for some of our other facilities, like some of the things that Aaron is doing right now. helping with the launch pad because it's our building and they have no heat. So, or air conditioning. But we have been paying,
Pretty much separate jobs that are just one job,
it's one job.
but facilities management has nothing to do with plan.
Well, it's because of the building knowledge. That's all, just because right now, you know who our facilities manager is for this building? Town clerk.
It's always been the town clerk. Come on.
Yes. So anyway, we're swapping that over to somebody who actually knows a little bit more about buildings and how they work.
No offense.
Sorry,
Jessica.
that was not meant to be, that was not meant to be a diss, right? So the biggest thing there, though, is that for the past couple of years, since John Plano left, we have been using Safe Built as our third-party contractor for building plan review. They've done a great job, but they don't do a complete job. So when they review it, it still has to come back to us for the energy codes and the green code and everything else. And at this point, this year, we are estimating that by the end of the year, we will have paid them more than $100,000. So this position is going to pay for itself, and hopefully free up Aaron to, you know, do some of the more administrative things that the senior building official will need to do, like codes and things like that. Additionally, in planning, as you can see by the fact that Jared is in here in front of you pretty much every meeting, and he's got planning and zoning, and he's got historic preservation, and he's got employee housing and affordable housing and, you know, transportation planning and all of those things. He is pretty tapped out, and we do not want to burn out employees. My thought process about the adding of these employees is that probably over the past dozen years, we should have been adding one every 3 years. And, you know, every job has gotten more complicated, every job has gotten bigger, and we have not grown accordingly. So along with those 3 employees that I am going to kindly beg you for, we have no place to seat them in this building. So you will see on the capital budget about $280,000 to make some alterations to this building. We do not have a quote, but we are talking to an owner's rep. We are planning what can be done. Some of those things are very simple, splitting 2 offices, taking down the 2 walls that are not load bearing, and making 2 large offices into 3 smaller offices. Potentially getting rid of the break room on the other side of the building and fixing up this kitchen a little bit, because why do we need 2 kitchens in the building? You know, those kinds of things. So that, so I wanted to explain a little bit about that and get a feel for, even if it's just like a thumbs up, that you agree that that these positions are necessary and will definitely help Carbondale, because I don't want to, I'm hoping anyway, not to have to wait until January to start posting things, as long as things take to get hired. We talked at the board retreat about grant writing services. This year, we put $20,000 into the budget for grant writing. It clearly is not enough. We bypassed that a couple of months ago. For this budget, I have put 50,000 in. We're not looking to hire a full-time grant writer for a town this size, but with all the projects that we have going on, that was our best guess as to what would be appropriate. And I'm certainly happy to talk about that. With regard to building operations, Greg mentioned that there would be some fairly substantial costs. One of those is trying to figure out what we need to do to keep the porch from falling off the Thompson house. And also we budgeted for this year. So this is a carryover from 2024, But as we got our quotes to replace the doors in the lobby, which do not seal properly and have broken hardware, et cetera, we realized that what we really need to do is make those ADA accessible. So we sort of took a step back and we're getting quotes for wiring the building for a push button entry. So that's why that's being pushed over until 2025. The energy plan, the Clear and Garfield Clean Energy, Clear is coming next week to give a presentation and explain why that number has gone up as much as it has and get your approval on their work plan. So I will just let them do that. Please be aware that there are a lot of things that are sort of up in the air, like what are we doing with crossings on 133? I like the way you said that, Chris, with sort of a corridor plan for 133. Mayor and I talked about that a couple of times, and I've talked to Jared and Kevin with regard to making a plan for 133. We should talk about, as part of this budget process, even before we have that plan, what do we want to make sure goes in the budget so that if we're going forward with these things like the roundabout, we know how to move forward. What's in here is some money to buy easements, because we'll need easements for a roundabout at Industry Way. Some design money. The crossings are not in the budget yet. If we put them in the budget based on board's recommendations, we were thinking, I know the board had talked about 2, starting out with 2. The money to design those and engineer them would be in the 2025 budget, but they would be in the streetscape fund. That's our recommendation, because that's really where we felt that they belonged. And that fund basically has continuing revenue, and there's plenty of money in it to cover those things right now.
The design is coming out of streetscape, or the
Probably,
actual?
probably the actual building would as
Okay.
well. But for the 2025 budget, we would just be budgeting for design, planning and design, with construction being spring of 2026, just because, especially because it's a state highway, it takes a long time to get that through CDOT and through our engineering process, et cetera. We cannot manage that in-house.
Is the capital construction fund like just to pass through essentially?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep in mind that this is a very rough budget. I've already found a couple of things that I'm like, wait, why does that say 0? I know there should be $10,000 in there, or what have you. I haven't found anything that's big money, but we will be continuing to refine this as we go along. And as we may get other requests, I have a couple of requests on my desk for additional money. One organization who got money in the past through the community grants, but is now asking for more than they would be able to get through a community grant. And that has not been addressed yet. So it's a work in progress. Lastly, I know we talked to Chris today. Christina's out of town. She had some questions about the budget. Just because we offered to meet with you guys yesterday or today about the budget doesn't mean we won't talk to you anytime about the budget. We just wanted to make sure that any initial questions before tonight's meeting were able to be addressed individually. But certainly call us at any time to talk about the budget.
Great. Thank you for the overview. Let's start with some kind of big picture questions. And again, I think that offer of, we did it 2-on-2 one year. It was Christy and Lauren and 2 of us. I think Chris and I did it together one year. It's really good because it allows you that time to go into the weeds and to ask all the questions about, I don't understand this and I don't understand that, and allows us at these meetings to get into, well, what do we want to see different, and get past that understanding level. So big picture questions or things that are missing, that we want to talk about more? Colin?
Big picture, housing, town center. Is it worth having a conversation with Art Space before the budget is over? Just to get a general sense of, I think the last time we talked to them, we said, okay, we have a strategy for phase one. Start thinking about phase two and come back to us, just so we have some ideas.
We're having those conversations with Art Space right now. And I am trying to see if Andrew will be available to come and meet with the board in November for an update. One of the things is that we're talking about is, financing, capital stack, what have you, and are there multiple projects happening on that property at the same time, potentially through either Art Space with two different contractors or two different developers. And we're just brainstorming it right now. So yes, is the answer. Yeah.
On the, you might have know about this. So we donated, didn't we donate $100,000 to West Mountain Regional Housing or did we just give them the 40?
We did both.
We gave them 20 for operating and then 100,000 for the good deeds.
For the good deeds, right?
Yes.
And we have a proposal to do that again. Is it 100,000 this year again for that, or?
That would be my preference.
Do we have, is that in the budget or?
No, we
Yeah.
haven't.
Okay.
I have 20,000 in for West Mountain.
Just for the
Regional.
administrative stuff, okay.
Yeah.
I guess that 100,000, is that, I was not sure if that was, I sort of got the impression when they first came to us that that was earmarked for a house in Carbondale. No,
It's regional, but in our first round of,
I could have sworn that was presented that way to us. I don't really mind that much, but I do think I have a little bit of trouble if we are gonna give them a lot of money if it's all gonna get spent in Glenwood.
everybody has the same problem. It's a reality. It's really clear, but the interesting dynamic is Aspen had the same problem. And in the first round, someone who lives in Carbondale is potentially buying a house with the fund. So we get the house, they get the employee. The first one in Silver Sun was a Glenwood Springs nurse. The next one could be a principal at one of the schools. So again, it is tough. But what's neat about the program right now is it's working. There's a huge demand. And you have to remember, these are investments in long-term affordability for professionals, right? These are people who don't qualify for our current affordable housing because they make too much, but not near enough to buy a place. And what's neat is it's actually rolling out. And if we actually get an employee that buys a house in Glenwood, that benefits us, right? So you don't have to buy your home in Carbondale. You could buy it in Glenwood Springs because it's probably more affordable down there. And we benefit. It's held as a deed restriction, but we now have an employee who lives only in Glenwood.
You're talking the town of Carbondale.
Or anybody who has enough to buy, say, a $400,000 or $500,000 home. That's still not everybody. It's a narrow amount, but there is nothing for that. So this program can buy it down. We get the deed restriction in perpetuity. And now if that person leaves the city of Aspen or school district or wherever, they can stay in that home as long as they work in the region.
So I want to bring us back up.
Bring us back up.
To high level.
That's pretty high level. I don't think that was too in the weeds.
And my final point would be huge return on investment. For $100,000, we now have upwards of 5 deed restricted units between here and Newcastle. We could not build 5 units for $100,000. So
I
just
think we
love
need
to talk about it more.
Yeah, I think we need a conversation about a contribution to that program again and what that could look like and what the program is recommending and maybe some sort of update from the Housing Coalition on that. And probably a broader discussion about what's our housing strategy for this year and the budget. overall, how much of it is toward that, how much of it's toward town center, how much of it's toward staff housing. So that seems like a discussion that we need to have. But let's go around with other questions and thoughts so far. Erica?
That's what I was gonna ask is just make sure, yeah, we have a housing discussion, and then I had down, I'd like to see at least us put another $100,000 into the buy down program or good deeds. It's a better name. This is my wish list. I'm just gonna go through it really quick. I had not thought through, obviously, and didn't know the design components, but I was definitely feeling like with our fund balances where it's gonna be, that we go ahead and move forward with 2 Highway 133 crossings. And so if that's just the design work that we can get done and we can't get any built next year, I guess so be it, but I'd love to see at least one. And then for the capital improvements plan, just like Aaron's helping with the launch pad, I just wanted to make sure that we have both the launch pad and Third Street Center at least on the list, so that we're just looking at them long-term. They're assets that we own, even if they pay rent, or Third Street Center is kind of a unique situation, but just wanted to make sure when we see that those are at least on there.
Great point.
For the, I'd really like us to go ahead and allocate or earmark funds out of the bag fee fund that
I have a
we,
proposal that I'll be bringing.
okay. Cause I think we should allocate up to, and I'll just go ahead and continue with what I was gonna say, is $50,000 out of that fund that we use to reimburse nonprofits for events where they either have to pay for waste diversion services, or it can go towards purchasing compostable products. And then I do think we have our energy efficiency building fund, which is gonna have a fund balance of 119,000 at the end of the year. And I think we should just discuss what we could do. I've got 3 different ways to spend the money. But I think one, we could say, hey, let's put $100,000 of that towards the trellis and solar at the pool. We could say, let's put that entire amount towards the geothermal project if the grant's awarded, or put some, caveat in there. Or depending on what Clear's proposal is, if they have any sort of request for funds to go towards rebates for energy efficiency projects at people's homes, then some funds could come out of there. But I think we haven't really done much with those funds in quite a while. So those feel like some good uses that we could do. And maybe we could talk about it the night we're talking about energy if we have Clear here. Not necessarily with them, but we could have that on the agenda. And then I think that was it. Wait, hold on. On the, I know you had a consultant on the planning and codes, or we have a carryover, and maybe we'll talk about that with the building department, but
That's Proposition 123, and that's for affordable housing codes to enable fast tracking applications.
Okay.
And that is a grant that we got, and the RFP is about to go out for the consultant.
Okay, cool. Because along those lines, we had just identified these other updating town codes that might be outside of affordable housing. And so just wanted to, like, if we need to put some more money into, maybe it's the same consultant and we can put in money to expand their work plan or scope of work, just to give
And it
that
may very well
support.
be that having an additional employee may be able to help with that.
Yeah, so I think that was the other thing I had on my list for now.
So I think let's keep going around and kind of hearing people's initial thoughts, and then we'll bring it back together and
Thanks,
make
Erica.
sure, because I want staff to be clear on what the board as a whole wants versus one person. So
Yeah,
like all those,
right.
we'll just need to say like, do we all agree on those, or enough of us to move them forward? Jess, thoughts, questions?
I don't have a lot other than what's already been said, but I had multiple people come to me and ask what's being spent at town center and how those funds are being used. And I would like to have a better understanding of where we are in that process, how much money we've already spent on what we've done, how much money is committed in a contract. And I have a lot of hesitations around the direction that it's going, and I've heard that from people in the community. And so I'd like to understand just where we are financially, how much do we have to spend to get to where we want to be? And what does that look like for the next budget year?
Anything you want to comment on that others have mentioned so far? The buy down program, looking at contributing to that, having a discussion about kind of our housing strategy from a budget perspective. And then Erica mentioned a few other things as well. Are there any of those you wanted to
I think
highlight?
those are all good conversations, and I would be supportive of having those conversations.
Okay. Ross, questions, comments so far?
I'll echo the need for a town center update. I think we're overdue for that, and would really probably put maybe everybody at ease a little bit, or at least give us a lot more questions to figure out, because it seems like we've lost some steam there. And yeah, I think that it will inform a lot of our housing decisions also, when we go from there. Highway 133 crossings, I think also obviously like those are the housing and 133 were the big topics going door to door, and remain those big topics. A few other sort of maybe smaller items, I think we do need to look at how we're funding the pool at this point, and sort of where funds are siloed or are not siloed. I think we should make that facade happen. We get one chance to do that, and I'd really like to. I'd love to see us give everything we can, or like to see that happen from rec funds. Sort of an aside on that is that that the whole notion of sort of a capital campaign as a backstop really is not without its own costs. And as a community that really prides itself on our nonprofits, there are opportunity costs to donor-seeking nonprofits when the town is out there also soliciting funds. And certainly that's not easy to necessarily quantify, but it's something from a budgetary perspective that I don't know exactly where that fits in, whether we spend some more from our reserves or whether we trim things down. And I know I've just said that we don't, but I think we need to look at that and maybe address some of the outcomes from there. And then finally, sort of low hanging fruit, I would really like to see us address the green transformers. It's enough of the transformers at Main and Hendrick, the turn there that's a big, I don't know if you ever turn out of City Market behind everything. There's at
Right on the corner.
yeah. It's a real thing. Someone's gonna get hurt. We can find a way to make that better, and I think town would appreciate. I hear that enough from enough people, like, yeah, what the heck was anybody thinking? And I think it's something that we could fix.
I don't want to get in the weeds in this, but I can just briefly say that those transformers were placed there before there was a project there, before Hendrick Drive was there.
Okay.
And there was an inquiry about what it would cost to move them at one point almost 10 years ago, and 10 years ago it was a $2 million price tag. So I imagine it's probably a $5 million price tag now, and I'm not even sure. I know that you had said something about whether or not they could be buried. And I'm not even sure there's room to vault them because they're so big. It's a main trunk line.
Street change. I mean, there are other ways around it. I mean, the street.
I'm just saying
If
that
it were there, then all the more reason
it's
the
been,
street should
it's been
be where it is.
discussed in the past.
Yeah, but it's not, yeah, I mean, it's a combination of those two.
Are you, just to be clear though, as a budget discussion, are you suggesting that the town budgets to relocate or bury those that are on private property, like take care of that?
But I think that we need a budget to look at what we can do to fix something that is dangerous as we are doing for things on 133. Yes, I think that should be, that corner is dangerous enough as is, and isn't gonna get better. And so we should look at it.
I know
And I
that
hear it
the
enough.
map plan had an initial recommendation, at least for a four-way stop at that location, which is quite
Maybe it's that simple.
And that's in the approval for the marketplace whole development, was that when the need arises, a four-way stop goes in there. So that's like part of the plan. And it's a very inexpensive solution.
I forgot to say something right before. if there is a way to fast track the design on the 133 crossings, I think that that should be a huge priority. CDOT is like in our corner, on board. We've had multiple meetings with Bill Crawford. I think even if we have to start those conversations right now, like, I think that somebody's gonna die on 133 at City Market if we don't do something now. Like, I don't think we should wait until 2026 if we can help it to build the crossings.
Okay. Christina, any initial big picture budget thoughts, questions, feedback?
Big picture, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Big picture, I like adding additional positions. Thank you, Lauren, for putting that in. I think that's much needed, and as we grow, we need those additional employees. I'm also for things that Erica said about just looking at some of our taxes that we're already getting and spending that, especially on the bag fee, or I shouldn't say taxes, but fees. And then of course, 133, I think, or what Ross was saying in that back area, if I would say at least put better crossings there. Like, I don't know, talk about like maybe putting the lights there when people are crossing over from the city, where the City Market is, to the other side. I just feel like even putting something as small as lights there, somebody push the button for lights, that would help that would help. So just really looking at those areas where, like Jess said, I mean, we don't want anybody to die, but when you say those words, it's like, oh my gosh, that's our priority. That's the bigger picture. We need safe streets. And if we could do something like add on better crossings, then let's do it. Let's not wait. And that's what I have. I'm looking forward to meeting with Greg and Lauren. I'll get with you when I'm back, and we'll go over more things on what little smaller questions that I have on the budget. But thank you.
Okay, thanks, Christina. So far I'm hearing support for what's in the budget. The new positions, I'm not hearing any concern about those. Those seem to align with board priorities, public feedback, staff input. I'm not hearing any concerns about allocating some funds to do a fairly substantial, but also fairly minor remodel of town hall to add office space where, without expanding the footprint. Fund balances are strong, so that's good. So it's mostly what we're talking about is adding a bunch of other stuff, which, well, there's a point at which we don't want to go too far with all that, but we are in a great position with really healthy fund balances. So I think we just have to be really strategic about how we do that. And that we, spend it on the right long-term priorities. But it sounds like we need some sort of proposal from staff about how to approach the issues on 133. What our next step with that is. I mean, the conversations I've had with Lauren are similar, I think, Chris, to what you suggested when we were talking about the application a little while ago, which is I feel like what we need is we have an access control plan. We have that, but we've never put in a prioritized, phased plan with numbers beside it for what are we actually going to do first, second, third, and what year are we going to do it, and about what is it going to cost. And I would hope that we could develop that partly in-house. Maybe there's some level of public process and consultant, but that it's not a year-long process that gets bogged down in a commission and all that. Like we keep it probably at kind of the staff and board level and move relatively quickly. But I just want to be careful that like the decisions we make, they have to outlast every single one of us, and they have to be things that the public felt like, yeah, that's how we as a community prioritize those things, so that it's not like, well, this board wants to do this crossing first, and then there's an election in a year and a half, and then they want to switch it over there, and then we get a new town manager and a new public, like we've got to make it resilient to those kinds of changes. So that's where you have to be careful how fast you move with that. But other thoughts about that part before we move on to other things, just the 133. It sounds like we are committed as a board to spending serious money on safety enhancements to 133. We want to do it as soon as we can but in the right cadence, and we need, I think, some guidance on that. I don't think we should, like, I think it should be the one by the Montessori school. I think it should be the one up here. And I don't know. I'd like to see updated data from CDOT. I'd like for them to partner with us. Like Jess said, they've been partnering with us. It seems like we're in a good spot to move that forward with like expediency.
Well, I mean, just to respond to that, I think CDOT is there, and I think we've already identified where across from City Market it needs to be from CDOT's perspective. I think the one by Ross is a little more challenging, but I don't think there's any reason why we wouldn't go full in on the City Market one. And CDOT's more or less saying that's the obvious place to put it. It's in between the current roundabout and the potential one. So I agree the plan is a great idea, but we've been talking about a crossing and we just did one and it's really well received. So I think we could move forward and just go as we're doing the plan so that we don't end up having to wait a whole nother year to get a crossing that we know is pretty obvious. Wow.
I think the difference is, and I agree, I think I want to move on this too. I think the difference is in talking to staff that the one at Cowan, there was already a crossing and we just enhanced it.
True.
Like this is
but we met with CDOT. We could have Bill online and he probably said, yeah, that's where you want to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally said, this is where you should put it.
We
And
were
so
sitting with him.
I think that if we let it wait, like what if Bill leaves? Like, I think that we're to a point where let's schedule a meeting with Bill Crawford and say like, what do we need to do to make this happen? What do you need from us? What design do you need? How far do we need to take it on our end for you to say,
okay,
this is it and it works?
We have that information already, Jess. Kevin has that information already.
So it sounds like there's interest then in that crossing being priority one is what I'm hearing. And then when I talk about the plan, it's like the magical roundabout at Industry Way that we've talked about for years. How many of these problems does it really solve? And what really happens at Dolores Way at that point? And questions like came up with this restaurant. I don't want to see those questions come up every time, and none of us do with every single development. So it seems like we need a real strategy for like, there's some other roundabout mentioned in the plans that's at La Fontana Plaza. That's in the access control plan. Is that ever really going to happen? Like, I just think we need to get real on some of these expensive ones, but I can go with, if we're really clear as a community and as a board and as staff that priority one is this one spot across from 133, it's pedestrian and bike crossing. We start moving on that, and simultaneously we start planning for the bigger improvements and budgeting for that.
That was one of the questions I had about the roundabout dollars that are in the budget for next year, is this design and easements for the roundabout. Has anyone said like, is this still the best place?
Right. Those are the questions that
And so
come up every
before
time
we
talk about it.
dedicate $400,000 to designing a roundabout at Industry Place or Industry Way, whatever it is that really where we need one at this point?
Right. That's why I think we need that updated data.
That makes sense to
CDOT,
me. That
all
makes sense to me.
I've been wondering that same thing. I mean, because that was decided before any of us were in this room.
And before anything was
And-
built on the west side. of
Right,
the
yeah.
highway.
And so I think, I like that because I've been wondering that same thing, is like, is that still the best spot? And so my questions would be, how is that evaluated? What kind of information is needed? And
We did do a little bit of that with CDOT,
Mhm.
and CDOT has been involved with our engineers. We've spent a couple $100,000 on engineering and design.
I know.
And CDOT actually made some recommendations, and we shifted the roundabout and changed the design so it's a little more oblong or something. But I guess the question is, who answers that question? Because I think that we have been going along in our conversations with engineering and with CDOT. And of course, age-friendly Carbondale came in and we talked about Nislanic. But part of that roundabout, remember, at Industry is in conjunction with pushing the road through. And I think that's why it was placed there. That's why we bought the house that we did there, because we knew that we wanted that property in order to push the road through. So that's a much bigger
Mhm.
I'd just like to
conversation.
understand if is that really where we want to go? Or is that the direction that Carbondale wants to go on decisions based probably 10 years ago at this point or longer? So I would like a big picture. Just because it's how it was planned all along doesn't mean that we can't pivot now.
Right, I'm just saying, who answers that question?
I
Like,
think
what
that's
is
that
that process?
I think that's why
Yeah.
we need updated traffic data, CDOT input, staff input, some level of public process to really make some decisions about building on the access control plan, updating it, and then making some decisions. My only worry about moving fast on one crossing outside that process would be that we build that crossing and then we do this process and we're like, actually, that's where this other turning change should go, and that's gonna screw that up. Like, I just a little bit concerned there, but I think we have time. Again, right now, first draft of the budget, we're trying to figure out what's in the budget and what's our plan for the year. And I mean, Lauren, I think a next step is conversation with Kevin especially about what does the process look like for us to sort all this out?
Mhm.
And
And
what is
also
it-
what's gonna come in on MAP
And it'd be
that's
great.
gonna affect that. I don't know.
I don't think much on 133, but it'd be great to get Bill on the call as we talk.
I think the map will have a fair amount on 133, and I do think it is totally legitimate as public outreach. I feel like that's been a huge focus of this whole process, and I don't think we have to go and do a whole nother round of public outreach. I think we understand the problem. It's all just a matter of prioritization of which project comes first. I'm not ready to abandon the roundabout and like the work there. I do think it doesn't necessarily have to be the first thing we build at all, and could be quite a ways down the list even, but I think in the long run, that's probably does make sense to me still as a spot for it.
And Dolores Way is a problem, as we heard through this application, and it's gonna continue to be, and it's not gonna get any better, that it's a very dangerous.
Yeah, and the Dolores Way thing, I think there's a whole, that's, as I already said before, there's a whole, that's really complicated, because I think there's a whole integration with RAFTA there of like, is there a way we could make buses move through that more efficiently? And
But that's what I guess that, I just keep coming back to, like, we've got to address these things together and put a plan together. And I don't mean that we have to take the next year doing a plan.
I think we can do both, though. I think the Nice Atlantic one is, to me, in my mind, that seems legitimate, and we've like sort of worked it out. I don't think there's a chance we're building around about it at Nice Atlantic, and we're gonna like change that intersection in a drastic way.
The road doesn't go anywhere.
So I think that we're safe building that one, but I think it's good, be nice for us to concurrently at least. And I don't know, I don't think it has to be I think it's maybe we just have trying to like nail down the concept for each intersection, because each one's gonna just have to get engineered anyway and run into all kinds of infrastructure.
And the
Questions?
crossing location is not at Nice Atlantic. The CDOT wants to see it between the two right-in, right-outs at the gas station,
Yeah.
essentially.
And you go right across to a sidewalk, right into City Market.
Yeah.
Oh, to the one where the big sidewalk comes
Yes.
across.
That is
That
where I
sounds all
see
right.
most people
That's
playing
what they
Frogger.
said, is that it seems to be like right in between the right-in, right-outs.
It's that natural.
So-
And you don't have
Because-
to deal with cars. He said that it's really bad to deal with cars and pedestrians at the same crossing. So you move the cars away from the pedestrian crossing.
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
So for tonight, Greg, Lauren, you're hearing strong support from the board in allocating funds for that crossing in this budget, and for some level of planning that will get us clarity on the phasing for the other traffic control and pedestrian safety measures, including the roundabout at Industry Way, figuring out Dolores Way, which may be one and the same. It may be that you just have to go right and go a quarter mile out of your way. We don't need to engineer those ourselves tonight, but we need to figure out what the process is. I know it's fun. And so, I think as you talk to Kevin about that, like whether the $400,000 or whatever it is for right-of-way access stays in, or whether some of that gets converted to one of these other things.
The concern about the 400,000, I believe, and that's a guess as to what it would cost, is that if that property gets sold and a development application comes in and that's the property we need the easement on, that's gonna be a lot harder to get if we wait, because it's an empty piece of property right now that we'll need that right away on. So I will let Kevin brief that when he comes in with his Public Works
Okay.
presentation. But that's the concern about, we gotta put something in here for
I think
this.
the other things that we're hearing is a healthy conversation during this budget process about housing strategy, including the buy down program, staff housing and town center.
Mm-hmm.
What are we spending our money on in 2025?
Yeah.
We want to move something forward that creates some units of housing.
I was going to bring something in at the end when we talk about, is there excess fund balance above and beyond? And what do you guys want to do with it? And that would be something that would
Yeah, and
certainly
I
be
think
part
you
of
know,
that conversation.
our big ticket items are our top priorities. It's housing and it's 133 right now. And so I think we don't want to spend all that in 1 year, but we want to have a plan that says, you know,
Right.
over the next X number of years, we may spend that fund balance down to make some really serious progress on those two.
Yeah.
Only other item I had was just on the grant writing. I've heard a lot of support from this board on grant writing support. And I've heard a number of us mention having somebody, if it's not a full-time staff member, I think, you know, we'll defer to your judgment there on what's the best approach. But somebody who's proactively looking at work that we're doing and seeking grants, rather than waiting for us to call them and saying, we need a grant for the pool. Somebody who's, there are consultant firms that do this, I think, where they look at our policy, they look at this, you know, they really help us access funds proactively. And that's where I think having a big plan like for 133, we could then say, let's start targeting. It might take us a few years to get state or federal or county or other grant funding for that. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but that's the kind of approach to grant writing I've heard.
I would second that. I spoke with Eric a fair bit, just sort of about his grant writing prowess and he didn't seem averse to the idea of someone that would be doing some coordinating. And what I've heard from everyone I've talked to about granting is that it's really as much about the administration of it as it is the writing of it. But I think the finding of it in the first place is sort of that other element. And I think you're absolutely right. I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's a good bet. And I think it could be a position that pays for itself. Real close.
It's about 5 minutes till 9. I'd love to get out of here on time tonight. Anything that I missed in that kind of summary? I mean, Ross mentioned one thing that I did not include in that summary, and that's the town taking the lead on changing something about those transformer boxes at Hendrick and West Main. Is that a priority for others in the budget?
Well,
I mean, I think it's part of general strategy around traffic and pedestrians and all that.
that was kind of my question to Chris about the MAP project, because there are some things that are gonna come out of that a process that we might want to fund for next year. And that could be one of them. So that's why I was interested in getting it in front of us sooner than later, so we can at least, what are the high profile things that might be really valuable to do? And how do we set ourselves up for ongoing success? Because there's a lot of like experimental things that we potentially could do that don't cost a lot of money, but how do we make sure we're committing ourselves to do it so we don't wait a whole nother year to allocate funding for some of these recommendations?
I don't know how much it relates to budget funding but something that Colin was raising before we had Greg here was a session where we can learn more and kind of dive into financing options that we might have for some of these projects, where we could leverage our existing fund balance, which is very, very healthy, and potentially, you know, what are the other funds besides just the voter bond and something, and just understanding our opportunities that might be out there. Doesn't necessarily happen before we approve this budget, but I think just getting that in our agenda, and if that's something that you have some expertise in, Greg, or if we bring in DOLA, or we all learn together or something. Because I just, looking at our budget and looking at these priorities, like we have a super healthy budget right now. Can we leverage that to get some of these things paid for in some creative way that I certainly don't have any expertise on? So
Do you want to schedule out a work session to talk about that?
We could, I mean, it's complicated, I think, like, we'd have to know exactly what we're asking for. In my mind, that might follow, like, if we say, here are all the improvements we want to make on 133, and here's our plan for town center, and all up, this is $20 million worth of project, and then we say, well, here's what we can contribute from the general fund, what else do we do? And then we put together, you know, Basalt's a good example where they bonded based on existing revenues, but they got kind of a lump sum to get a bunch of stuff done up front, and then they're gonna pay it back over time. So in my mind, the project plan comes first, and then the financing plan comes second, but.
Well, I think they're also, I mean, we're gonna learn a bit on the housing side.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways, if we think of it in terms of how are we making town center happen, Art Space might be able to give us some ideas about how do we leverage some of the resources we have. It's just, we've got big capital projects, and even though we have a healthy fund balance, it's not near enough. So what options are there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one final thing, and it doesn't have to happen right now. Our health insurance went up 11.2. It's expected to go up 11. It went up 13 last year. I really would love us at some point to have a presentation from the Valley Health Alliance about their self-insured program. Just so we know what our options are. Many local governments are involved in this. It seems to be working. It's not perfect, but it'd be great to know what some of our options are as we move forward, because this keeps going up and we don't seem to be able to do anything about it. And they're trying to bring that down. And I think there's some neat opportunities that we should explore. Doesn't have to be by this budget, but over the course of the year, I'd love to get a presentation from them.
Colin, Greg has been doing a little bit of checking because he wasn't happy to see that either. And I won't speak for you, I'll let you speak for yourself, but one of the things that we did, because he's new, is we didn't have time to really shop that out this year. So we went ahead and renewed, but I know he has that on his schedule.
Great.
And I don't know if he even knows about Valley Health Alliance, but I know he had some other ideas and he started to look at that.
Fantastic.
And I'll just say that these increases, they're based on use. They're based on claims. And we have had some very large claims over the past 3 years. So, you know, but it's extremely high.
Yeah, totally get it.
Any other big picture stuff for tonight? Things that we want to see, have further discussions on, clarifications, anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna add on the health insurance. I did reach out to Public Sector Healthcare Group. They were kind of recommended by a friend of mine who runs a retirement 401k agency, and had a quote from her, and it looked like a little bit of a better option, but I just didn't have the time to implement it, you know, coming in. But definitely for next year, it's something I want to look at along with the retirement plan. Is something else I'd like to change.
And municipal insurance, that went up quite a bit too. Do you think that had something to do with Michael Francisco, or? No. Okay. Is that what covers that? Okay.
That is what covers that. But also, sorry, and you could speak to this, it also covers all of our assets.
Okay.
You know, we get new vehicles, we buy new property, you know, those kinds of things. It's all covered under there. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, the municipal insurance covers liability. It covers all of you guys for anything you say. It covers a wide range of stuff. There were several claims, this roof, for example, that probably went added to that, but the Francisco case was actually from a previous year's stuff. So the Francisco case had nothing to do with this year's increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Greg. Look, you just survived your first budget review, so thank you. But yeah, it's super clear, and I think you're hearing just a lot of ambitious goals from this board, and we'll have to figure out what we can do now and what we need to do later. But thanks for all the work that's gone into this, and thanks everybody for a really good discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Next week, work session, we've got department budget presentations that we just heard about. We will be talking about short-term rentals next week, so if you know anybody who's interested in that, let them know. We're getting information out to people, hopefully.
That's gonna be the following week?
Next week, so 15th, work session, we'll be talking about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really quick before you adjourn, is there any way we can get that calendar for future meetings?
She's working on it.
My baton.
I have it. Ben and I talked about it this morning. We decided not to bring it to this meeting, but we'll.
Just because we don't have enough detail on the next few meetings, I thought she has a calendar of like when we're doing annual updates from all the different boards and commissions. But I think what you're asking for is like what I'm looking at right now.
Yes,
This changes every day until the Thursday that the packet goes out. And
that's
so
okay.
we can give a few that are a few weeks out,
I
but that's it.
just really would like to know, like last week, that we're looking at STRs next week.
Yeah.
So that we have more time to get people here.
And that's going in the newsletter is right to give people a preview of the month.
There'll be a blurb in every newsletter about what's coming up for the following month.
Okay.
So if you will help me get people on that distribution list, it's growing way too slowly.
Yeah,
But it's a good newsletter, so.
People don't want emails, so they don't want to give me their emails. I just need to be able to text people and say like, hey, come to the meeting. So I just would like to be able to sort of plan for what we're doing,
Yeah. I think we're
even if
working
it changes.
So Lauren, tell me if I'm wrong on any of these. What we have potentially for next week is the budget presentations from those departments, the short-term rental discussion about do we want to open the door essentially to more, clear work plan and budget for 2025. And are we talking building codes?
I believe we're talking building code.
But it's
I
just
think
an update?
to the board.
Okay.
It's not a approval or a public hearing or anything like that. It's just another update. We're trying to do them every couple of weeks until the code is adopted, so that the board's not in the dark.
And then on the 22nd, we'd get more budget updates, police and recreation. We may continue the discussion and make any decisions on short-term rentals if we're ready. We'll figure that out next
I'll
week.
have an ordinance in front of you to discuss,
Okay.
but when you pass it, it's.
And that's all we've got on there for now. Okay, thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So funny looking this way, both of you guys look like the way these chairs are, look like you're packing heat. Like when I was silent, it's like, they just have that look, like. What's with the gun in this?